The October 4th Park Board meeting. And as we are looking forward, we've got, hold the microphone.
Yes, please.
Is this better? Okay. We're going to go ahead and call the Park Board meeting for October 4th in order. And we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves and set as a roll call. Chad, you start us off.
Chad Raymaker, Ward 6.
Dick Dale, Ward 5. Mark Bilderbeck, Ward 4.
Linnea Archer, Park Board President.
Vicki Anderson, Ward 3.
Marty Cormack, Ward 1.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from August 6th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That leaves us to the order of agenda. Is there anyone who would like to change the order of the agenda or move things around?
Request from staff. We'd like to reverse the order of the master plan discussions and go with Soldiers Field, Park first, and then Silver Lake.
Thank you. Nothing else? Okay. And that leads us to the open comment period. So we have people who have signed up to speak tonight. We traditionally have 15 minutes for open comment. I think we've got more speakers here than will fit in 15 minutes. So when we get to the end of the 15 minutes, I'll ask the board if they would like to extend that, unless anybody would like to extend that right now. Okay, we'll see where we're at. So people who are, we have Pat Gannon first, or Pat Carroll first.
Yeah, the swim club would like to start out with a video. Did you have comments in addition to that, just the video? Okay.
Just a second after, yeah, thank you.
Our beautiful Rochester area is the third largest city in the state of Minnesota, and over the years has consistently ranked as one of the best places to live in the United States. Unfortunately, Rochester's outdoor swimming pools have not kept up with the vision of Rochester being a destination city. Almost 100 years ago, city leaders recognized that it was important for children to learn how to swim. When it was built in the 1930s, Soldiers Field Pool was the largest swimming pool in the state. Silver Lake Pool was built in the late 1950s and is fast approaching its 70th birthday. Many towns surrounding Rochester have made the investment to provide modern, safe, and entertaining water parks. Here's what Casson and Stewartville have done for their much smaller communities. Casson is a town of 6,800 people and is 13 miles west of Rochester. This is the Casson Pool, a modern aquatic center with features galore. It has slides, diving boards, a climbing wall, and zero-depth play area for younger children. The lap pool is used for exercise and to teach swimming lessons. The facility attracts large numbers of people from Rochester and makes money for the city of Casson. And this is the Stewartville Pool. Stewartville has a population of 6,000 people and a short 10-mile drive to the south of Rochester. Stewartville did it right. Unfortunately, Rochester is an outlier and far behind the times. Rochester needs bigger and better pools for Soldiers Field and Silver Lake. Sadly, our pools are in a steady and deplorable state of decline. Because the pools in Rochester lack the favorable and fun amenities for children that other communities have provided, several Rochester daycare providers choose to bus children to pools to nearby towns. Here are a few examples of what Rochester pools need to remain inviting to the public and current with the wants and needs of our community. Splash pads, large lap pool, wading pool, a lazy river which can also be used for aerobic class, and a multi-use bathhouse which can be open in the summer for all to use and in the winter for ice skaters. As our great city continues to evolve as a globally recognized medical center and searches for ways to keep our entertainment and recreational facilities on par with the other phenomenal attractions we offer, it's important for the city of Rochester to acknowledge that our public pools need to be kept current with the wants and needs of our citizens. If the communities surrounding Rochester can identify the importance of these crucial public infrastructure projects and make those critical investments, why can't Rochester? Help this effort by writing letters to the editor and contacting your city council members, park board members, our mayor, and your favorite TV station today. Let them know the pools in our facilities are worth the time and investment to receive the upgrades they deserve and modernization they require. We all deserve the best pool facilities possible, so please take the time to let our city officials know. Thank you.
Thank you. And that,
Yep,
Oh.
I'm just gonna hand those.
okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Pat.
My idea. Take up more time, thank you.
The open comment, we try to limit to 4 minutes per person. When you're called up, please state your name. With so many people on the docket, if you can be concise, that would be appreciated. So Craig Martins. Next will be, after that will be Mike Fallenstein.
Pass these down.
Hi, I'm Craig Martins, a city golfer, and I want to discuss a letter to the editor that I wrote regarding Soldiers Field Golf Course. One of the city's favorite plans for use of existing Soldiers Field 18-hole golf course was a master plan short-term with modifications to holes 1, 3, 4, 5, 9 by expanding the existing pool to the south into the golf course. Now, there are environmental impacts of that plan. Generally, environmental problems occur when in the center of a city, a golf course that has had 96 years of golf course chemicals applied is dug up and disturbed. The favorite plan development area contains a city well that serves hospitals, clinics, and our Med City residents in a very delicate ecology. We live in the driftless area ecoregion of southeastern Minnesota. Driftless means there is no glacial drift here, okay, and that means that we have no surface capability to deal with any type of pollutant. Also, our southern Minnesota wells are 400 feet down to the St. Peter Jordan Aquifer. And there is a city well, okay, right next to this development area. The driftless area, pollution can take place, with regard to the St. Peter Jordan Aquifer. Between us and that aquifer, basically there's sedimentary rock. There's no gravel. So what happens is the water just meanders through the sedimentary rock. In 1956 to 62, I worked at a Minnesota golf course and routinely applied standard fertilizers, fungicides, herbicides, pesticides, all of which now have EPA product toxicity warnings. I applied 2,4-D, Rachel Carlson Silent Spring, cadmonate for dollar spot, brown patch, snow mold, to treat funguses. It's a heavy metal. Chloridane for worm casts. It takes care of worms. And Milorganite, made from Milwaukee sewage, now found to have lead in it. Soldiers Field Golf Course is also irrigated with Zumbro River water containing farm herbicide, pesticide, and fertilizer runoff. The above points are that this is a toxic, polluted piece of land that should safely remain undisturbed as a golf course. Conceptually, putting an arboretum there, I think, would be very risky. Trees, bushes, shrubs, flowers, etc. Thus, because of these risks, before this favorite plan is selected, I asked Mayor Norton and copied the City Council to request that an immediate environmental impact statement be done. There were suggestions previously that, at our previous meeting, that on September 20th, that possibly the pool could expand to the west. So there might be a process. Topic 2, should this 1926 Graham American Legion Feehan, possibly Tillinghast design city golf gem be considered for the National Register of Historic Places along with Silver Lake Park? I believe it should. Thank you very much. Thanks for serving. I appreciate this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Mike?
After Mike will be David Morrell.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Fallenstein. I'm here to talk about pickleball. I know that some of you might be familiar with pickleball, but one of the areas I live in is close to John Marshall and near Cook Park. And I want to talk a little bit about, just very quickly, about what is it that makes pickleball the fastest growing sport. It's a unique sport in that it's much different than tennis. Tennis, you typically show up, you've got your 4 people you're playing with or your 2 people you're playing with, where in pickleball, you can just show up and you'll be joined into another group and you'll get to play. So the important thing about pickleball is it's a social sport, unlike any other sport. I've run in playing pickleball, I've run into people that have been out of town going to Mayo Clinic, and they'll come down. Who you gotta play with if you're here from Mayo Clinic visiting and you wanna play a sport? You can't just go and jump into a baseball game or a tennis game, but you can come to pickleball and you can get in a game immediately. And I've met several people from out of town that way. And so it's the sociability, and I've met so many people from within Rochester and the surrounding community, again, because of the fact that we rotate people in, and the sociability of pickleball is the key thing that drives. But the biggest problem that we have is the constraints of the current courts that we've got. We don't have enough courts to fit everyone in, but yet pickleball serves the community in ways of making a true community, getting people to know each other from different parts of town or different communities around Rochester. We need to have more emphasis put on pickleball and providing the facilities because of the way it makes a community and will make Rochester that much stronger. And it shows when people from out of town that are here visiting the Mayo Clinic, they go, wow, you know, look at the people I got to meet. And just as an example, I've already met 2 people that I saw in other states. I met them here, they joined in, got to know them on vacation. I happened to be in the same city they were in, called them up, they said, yeah, come on, we'll go play pickleball together. How many other sports can you find where you can meet somebody in a very short time, get to be very good friends, and be able to go out there? So with that, I want to ask the board that we spend more resources and energy developing pickleball communities. And one of the key things is the reason we're able to meet so many people is we've got the pickleball communities like Cook Park in one central location. They're not split all over town, because then what you're doing is you're dividing up the community into different segments, and people who come, like say a Mayo Clinic patient is here or a family member, they can't join in. They can't go to one park and go, well, there's nobody here for me to play with. I'll go drive to another park. Oh, I'll drive to another park to try to find someone. By having a central pickleball complex, you're able to find people to meet and to play, and you don't need 4 people to play with. Thank you.
David?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Again, I'm Dave Morrell, I live at 140 14th Street Northeast. I'm here to talk as a resident, but also as a member of the Friends of Silver Lake. And I'm here to request that the Park Board table the action on Silver Lake master plan. And I'll go into a few brief items here. First of all, I was part of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, part of some of the focus groups, added comments on the website, And since the two versions of the plan, I guess the draft that came out as part of the study session for the council, and then as well as the updated or newer version that's on your park board plan agenda, I've shared some comments with staff. So I just think there's a number of things that need to be corrected, and also some things that need to be strengthened in the report. And as an example, goose management on page 101 of the master plan, it talks about informing the public, doing some landscaping, providing some areas for the geese, and some physical barriers. Doesn't really mention the nesting management. That program, in my opinion, was very successful 2 years ago. This last year, not as much. My concern is that one of the activities and the things the Friends tried about 2 years ago was to keep the trails at Silver Lake free of goose droppings. We pressure washed and cleaned them quite frequently. With the master plan proposal that's before you, the 3.3 miles of trails that are currently within Silver Lake are going to be expanded to 8.4 miles of trails. So we're looking at a much larger number of trails, a lot more to keep clean, a lot more to maintain. So I think that goose management needs to be strengthened as part of the master plan. Second item is vegetation. Again, Friends have tried for many years to maintain or manage the shoreline vegetation. We think it's an obstruction. You can't get good eyesight, line sight out to the water. If you walk around it now, you don't really see much of the water. So much of the master plan is trying to improve contact with the water and improvements that would do that. Again, the statement in the vegetation plan on page 97 says it should be maintained at a 3 to 4 foot height, which is less than it is, so we're making progress. But again, I think there needs to be some more discussion how that happens, and if that's just a general thing for the whole lake, or if we've got other areas that could be managed much better. Third is 7th Street, kind of a pet peeve of mine. You know, right now there's a 60 to 70 foot swath of bituminous paving that goes right through the middle of the park. There's less than 7,000 vehicles per day that are on that road based on your master plan study. That would mean that road could easily be narrowed to just a 2-lane, one lane in each direction, narrowed to some 28 to 30 feet. That corridor could be used for bike opportunities, could be used for some parking opportunities. I think that it needs to be discussed more in the master plan. The statement that's in the master plan is further studies should be needed. I mean, that in my mind is not a good way to leave our only master plan for Silver Lake. The fourth one is water quality. On the guiding principles, it's on page 3, says that water quality is important in 2, guiding principle 2 and guiding principle 3. Again, there's no statement at all in the master plan on water quality.
Thank you. Please wrap up.
All right. So again, I'm just requesting that this be tabled so we have more time to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. Roy Sutherland and then Mark Manges.
For you folks that were here the last time and I had my Viking shirt on, you notice I don't have it on anymore. So this does bring back a lot of memories about sitting up at that table. But as I've thought about this whole debate, and I think you all know what my feelings are about Soldiers Field, I think the city is missing an amazing opportunity here. We've got a disaster that happened in the 70s that created access from Soldiers Field to Silver Lake. And I think we're overlooking the fact that we can create a linear park that goes from Soldiers Field to Silver Lake and create something amazing. We've got the old power plant property that's gonna be, who knows what's gonna happen to that. You've got the property downtown that they're talking about redeveloping along the lake. You've got the Ampey property. You've got Bear Creek. You've got Mail Field. I don't think anybody's taken a look. How can we connect Soldier Field, Silver Lake, make this linear park that connects the two? And I know there's been a lot of time and effort in the master plans, but I just don't see the urgency to move forward till we've got the answers we want. I think the one answer is Soldier Field's an 18-hole golf course, but with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Hi, Kelly.
And then Luann Piazza will be after that.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mark Mangus. I'm a member of the Rochester Area Pickleball Association. And I really appreciate the collaboration that does exist with the park, with the Cook Park, and things that's wonderful. And I echo a lot of things that Mike Fallenstein said earlier. Another thing I'd like to add is in Rochester we have inclement weather here. And an indoor facility would be very nice to add to what's available in Rochester. That could be very helpful. We've got a lot of months where we can make use of it. Chip shots is nice. I've gone up there and made use of that facility, but it'd be nice if there's something a little more general for the Rochester community to use. And just want to get that across. Thank you.
Thank you. As Luann comes on board, would you like to extend? We're about at 15 minutes now. We're about halfway done. Seems like a consensus. Thank you. Go ahead, Luann.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm Luann Piazza.
You can pull that down too. You're welcome.
Sure. I'm Luann Piazza, and I am also a member of the RAPA Association, Rochester Area Pickleball. And I just want to say I'm hoping that our city doesn't leave pickleball in the dust. It's the fastest growing sport in America. It's continuing to grow. They're seeing growth for years to come. And I would hate to see Rochester be left behind and not have the facilities we need here to be able to continue the growth that we are experiencing in our club. We are continually growing by leaps and bounds. We just this past week on Monday, we have 6 courts in town. We had all 6 courts going. That's 24 people playing and another 50 waiting in line. That's a lot of waiting in line to play one game. So please help us build some more courts. Thank you.
Brad, wages?
I'm gonna go the other way with that. I don't belong to any organization. I'm not a Rochester resident for a long time. My wife and I moved down here from Fargo last summer. Okay, so first thing I did was find a golf place to go and play. I found the city Parks Commission had a pass. I bought the pass for the year. Go out to play golf and didn't realize golf courses have hills on them. Not in Fargo. So out of the 4 golf courses, there's only 1 golf course I can play. I'm retired military, 80% disabled. I want you to see a face of one of those numbers of the golfers they're talking about. We all have a story. We all have a need. You take away an 18-hole golf course, and there's a lot of us out there going to be, what do we do now? Play Hadley Creek, round and round and round and round and round? No. Rochester's Soldier Field is a great little course. I just want you to see a face and a story behind each individual golfer that goes out there. Put a lot of money in there every year. The seniors do, and as one senior retires, trust me, there's 2 or 3 following right behind them to join in. So the sustainability of that population is going to continue to grow. Thank you.
Pat Gannon?
Patrick Gannon, 1812 Northern Valley Drive, Northeast in Rochester. I'm gonna edit my remarks because a few things have already been said by other pickleball members. My wife and I attended the September 19th, 2022 City Council study session where the Soldiers Field Memorial Park Master Plan update was presented. We were disappointed to hear the addition of pickleball courts was removed from the Phase 1 plan and extended out 7 to 10 years. Even though the addition of pickleball courts received a 35% response from the community engagement survey. That's found on page 249 of the master plan. The 6 dedicated courts at Cook Park were constructed in 2016 when membership in the Rochester Area Pickleball Association consisted of 180 members. Current membership is just over 480 in those few short years, and it's growing all the time. According to the USA Pickleball Association fact sheet, from across the US, there's an 11.5% average annual growth rate in the past 5 years. In short, Rochester pickleball enthusiasts have outgrown the current pickleball facilities. In addition to the other comments that were made about the value of building community by having a centralized pickleball court location within the city parks, a cluster of courts at one location offers more opportunities, as I said, for drop-in play, but it also has a more attractive for tournament play. You have to have a group of courts in order to have a tournament come to the city. So we could be bringing visitors into our community, therefore supporting the local hospitality industry. So we suggest adding an additional 4 to 6 courts at the Cook Park location along with lighting. Could be done in a much shorter time frame and support the growing pickleball community. In the 4 years that my wife and I have been playing pickleball at Cook Park, we've seen the baseball field there being used only a handful of times, and we go to Cook Park a lot. Possibly we could, this could be looked at so that a portion of that area could be used for expansion of the courts. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Suzanne Bretto?
I brought up some props. If you want to pass this down. Hi folks, I'm Suzanne Bretto, and I am also a member of the Rochester Area Pickleball Association. Is this better?
Yes.
I also happen to be the president of the Rochester Area Pickleball Association. We've been an association, a non-for-profit, since 2015. Between 2015 and 2022, we've grown 460%. We're almost at 500 members. And I echo everything that my other fellow pickleball friends have said, but I also want to mention that what we want going forward, what we deserve as a community, is to be considered a stakeholder, to be part of the groups that you reach out to, that you want to involve in meetings. It was surprising to see that the Soldiers Field community engagement included 35 different organizations, and they had over 12 meetings about Soldiers Field. But pickleball was not part of that group. We were not invited to the table. However, somehow the community engagement survey noted a huge amount of response that pickleball was needed at Soldiers Field. There's a lot of golf people here, and I was here last Tuesday and I heard all the comments. I totally agree. Pickleball doesn't necessarily need to be at Soldiers Field, but we do need a regional pickleball center. And I'm just gonna read a little blurb here that I wrote because I'll forget it. The culture and personality of the sport of pickleball is unique in that people tend to congregate where there are a multitude of courts because the social and fun aspect of the game allows any one person to show up by themselves without a partner and play 4, 6, 12 games. And it just allows a wide array of different people from all sorts of demographics. We have teenagers, we have 40-year-olds, we have 80-year-olds out there playing. You don't need to know anybody, you just show up and you're welcomed in. And that's why it is important to think about a regional pickleball facility, and that's why I'm really hoping that you continue to think about our association when you have these discussions going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Vicki Pierce? That concludes our open comment period. Thank you for contributing. We do listen, and we appreciate your involvement in our community. With that takes us to the director's report. Paul?
Okay, I'm just going to give a very brief shout out to our team for a very busy and successful month. Please, I'll just direct your attention to the reports. It's very difficult to highlight because all areas just had a extremely busy and, as I said, successful month. I will say that there are several projects that advanced that due to supply chain and labor shortages, we saw a lot of progress finally this past month. The Lincolnshire splash pad, Century Hills Park, and I've drawn out improvements at Cascade Lake. So just wanted to share those highlights with you. If you have any questions, be glad to take those or direct them to our team.
Board members, questions for Paul?
What is the timeline currently? What currently is the timeline on the splash pad at Lincolnshire?
Jeff, can you take that?
Yeah, we should be actually pretty close by the end of the month. Yeah, we've had some good progress in the last few weeks. Right now we're waiting on building permit so that we can do our electrical and get the concrete pad grounded, so which hopefully happens in the next few days. But the goal and the plan is to have it pretty close to being done by the end of the month so that we can get it fired up this fall and then winterize it. And so all we have to do is kind of flip the switch next spring and have it up and running. So.
Now, one other question, because it was alluded to by one of our earlier speakers. We do have a system somehow in place that does reuse the water somewhat, don't we, on that?
Yeah, it's a recirculating system, so it's basically like a swimming pool where the water gets filtered through and treated and then reused.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't overusing extra water on that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, just as a reminder, one of the reasons that we applied for the grant was to be able to do that recirculating system as opposed to the pass-through, which would use quite a bit more water, so.
Thank you. Other questions, board? Seeing none, that moves us on to approval of the monthly bills. Would somebody like to make a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the bills. Seeing none, we'll call a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And that leads us to our consent agenda items. We have 14 items on the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull some of those?
I'd like to pull 3, just an update on 4 and 7.
Thank you. 3, 4, and 7. Any others? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve items 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Dick,
One question I have on McQuillan
thank
is
you.
that the splash pad, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead. Would you speak in the microphone though?
One question I have is, McQuillan, we're gonna put a splash pad there. Is there a bathroom included in that?
Yes, that's the plan, is to have a restroom facility along with the splash pad.
So what's the total cost of that gonna be like? Have any idea?
Rough number of the budget right now is 685, in that range.
Okay. Move approval on McQuillan.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Stonebrook?
Stony Brook, the only one I wanna do, and then it's, Ward 5, not 4.
So we needed a change on the, change in the
Mark
in the
wants it.
notes. Thank you.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. And then number 7, CBD tree replacement. Dick?
I was just curious why we pulled that out for the DNC, convention or annual meeting, when obviously the trees have been dead for a while. Why couldn't they have been planned ahead?
I'll just say that the trees were planned on being replaced at some point in time. Again, the DMC chose that location, so we just put that in the rotation faster.
So we paid for it though, right?
We paid for it, it's all part of our budget, yes.
Was that a warranty? Anything under?
No, those are all long past warranty.
Okay. Move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That leads us to the Soldiers Field Master Plan short-term implementation.
Okay, good evening, and before we start specifically on Soldiers Field, I just wanted to give an overview of where we are in the process on these 2 master plans, very high level, and hopefully bring in some of the things we've learned as we've held community engagement meetings and actually throughout the whole process over the past several months. And I'm gonna start out with just talking about, we shared this with City Council and with the Park Board as early as January, just to give an idea and remind us all of the process that we're going through. These are the building blocks we're working towards getting implementation of our system-wide master plan, get those projects realized. At the base of that, we've done a lot of work with Park Board, with City Council, with help of Jenna and the resources she has in community engagement. We've had a very sharp focus on equity. That's making sure all of our parks and facilities are accessible, but also making sure that people have fairly equal access to parks, trails, and facilities. We've since the implementation and approval of the system-wide plan, we've worked on project priorities and planning. Then the next layer there, the funding. You know, how do we move forward with, as the system plan identifies, $100 million worth of projects with the funding we have available. Of course, we had to do a lot of work on that. We talked in previous meetings about the passing of the 2020 voter-approved tax levy. That was a great step in moving projects forward. We've talked about our fees and charges that assist in our providing programs and the upkeep of facilities, tax investment through the normal CIP, capital improvement program processes, and grant funding. And we've, the team here, all the Parks and Recreation professionals that are here this evening have all had roles in bringing funding forward through their work in writing grants. And so we have some pretty good foundation here working towards implementation. A lot of good has come from this process, and this isn't something new. This is what we've done is work with our stakeholders in the community in providing a quality parks and recreation system. I was going to share this even before the pickleball folks spoke this evening, but I recall 8.5 years ago, the first spring I was here, started receiving calls about pickleball and the shape that the Cook Park courts were in at the time. And the pickleball players, I don't even think they were organized as RAPA at that time. They had some great ideas on how they could work towards getting a facility, and we sat down, we talked with them, we found out there wasn't a lot of tennis playing going on at Cook Park, so we dedicated those courts to pickleball. Just one example as you look at these building blocks, how that works. I don't know, sometimes I think maybe I shouldn't have taken that meeting because we've got a lot of demand for pickleball. But I'd like to just share we've applied that the same strategies to this process, to listening to the feedback regarding golf. We had a great hearing on September 20th. I think most of you attended that. We followed that up with meetings at all 4 golf courses that were very well attended, received great feedback, great ideas. We took the time to answer questions and have a really good discussion. I appreciate how that process has informed our decision making as we've moved along. Now, this evening, as we often do, as we always do when it comes to requesting action from the board, we have, this is what you'll see if you look at the agenda packet, the top portion there, the action we're requesting from the boards. First, for Soldiers Field, we're asking the board to adopt the short-term master plan update for Soldiers Field. We are asking that the board direct the parks team to utilize the long-term Soldiers Field master plan update to guide improvements that do not impact the 18 holes of golf, 18 golf holes. And then acknowledgement that the Soldiers Field master plan should be reviewed again in 2028. And that is, we have said this before, the long-term plan will be a guide. It does not, the board will not be held to delivering all the projects in the long-term plan. It's a decision-making guide as we move forward. Now, the board can do quite a bit. All 3 of those do not need to be approved for us to move forward. We are hoping that we can get the adoption of the short-term plan so as we can start moving forward with delivering the projects. As I showed in the previous slide, we'd like to be at that top tier of the building blocks to start implementing some of these very exciting projects for the community. Now, the critical policy issues. These are some of the areas, as I said, we had some great discussions, but there are still some unanswered questions. And critical issue is, I'm going to actually state these in reverse order. Should the golf course be adjusted to fit the enhanced aquatics features while still retaining an 18-hole course? It's one of the questions we need to come to terms with. You're going to see where we are with that as Mike and Rita this evening share with you where we are with the plan. And then, can the park board and city council approve improvements to the park north of the course that meet the expectation of the $5 million federal grant? That is just, with that grant, we did state that we would be delivering amenities to the park that were specifically identified in the grant application. Enhanced aquatics is a big part of that. I just want to make sure that we have that on the table as we have this discussion this evening. So just wanted to frame up that as a guide for discussion this evening, or hopefully that shares with you where we've come in the discussions. And I believe we stated at the hearing, we reiterated the summary of the September 19th, I don't think I have that date right, when we met with City Council and received their feedback from regarding the Soldiers Field Master Plan. That 18 holes was, there was no dispute among council members that they would like to see us move in that direction, maintaining 18 holes at Soldiers Field. And so that is what we're looking at. But you will see this evening the long-term plan, and that does, as I said, that gives us a guide for years out from this point. Now, regarding the Silver Lake Master Plan, what we're asking there, and there's actually an additional agenda item regarding the Silver Lake Master Plan. But for the plan in general, I just wanted to share what we're asking is to approve the master plan for Silver Lake Park, subject to any adjustment that come from our discussion this evening, and from the board and from our team members this evening. Now, there's additional action that can be considered. We realize that there is a very popular subject in the community is wanting to maintain 2 swimming pools, outdoor pools in Rochester. So one of the options that we talked about as a team is to approve the master plan and direct staff to develop options for a second outdoor pool in the park system. We would consider Silver Lake Park, but if we are going to consider this, we would like to have the discussion if Silver Lake would be the ideal location for a second pool, since we are pretty much starting from the ground up. And there, you have all seen the advantages with Silver Lake, but there definitely would be advantages elsewhere that we'd like to share and consider, or explore and consider. And then the next thing along those lines is explore funding strategies for a second pool option. And we would include a review of the resources that we're currently discussing from the accelerated referendum funding model that we previously has been approved and discussed. And I think it goes without saying that that's heavily influenced now by the additional funding we received from the federal grant and other sources. So we wanted to just make sure that we have that as part of our active discussion today and as we move forward. And then if additional funds are needed after that review, we would want to come back to the board and work on preparing a request to council. That we see that as part of our annual funding process, and we would work with city administration on that and bring those ideas to the park board. So just wanted to share that as we start the discussion, that we've definitely been listening, and it may not seem like it in some of the meetings because we've been in kind of the listening mode and have not shaped our decisions that come before the board, because they have to come before the board for the board to deliberate and discuss and provide feedback and ultimately take action on. So that's where we are, and I will now turn the time over to Mike to start in with the Soldiers Field Master Plan.
Thank you. I'll be very brief actually before I introduce Rita Trapp, who's with HKGI, who is our consultant on the project. Let me start by saying we started this project about 10 months ago doing a master plan. This is the second plan we've done for Soldiers Field. It's an update to the original one done in 2014. In 2014, we adopted a plan that showed a 9-hole golf course as a long-term goal, or at least a future use of that piece of property. That was based on community engagement back at that point in time. Over the last 10 months, we've had lots of community engagement as well for this current plan update. Again, people like pickleball folks that express their concerns or desires for more pickleball in the city. Golfers saying we want to keep 18 holes of golf out here. The aquatics folks saying we need a second pool or better aquatics overall. And trails, we want more trails around our community, including in Soldiers Field, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People want more and want better quality services in our city. They want it downtown in Rochester, down at Soldiers Field. It's a very busy park, centrally located in our city. Again, that's part of the challenge we have, part of the opportunity we have, part of that fun that we can create in our community for both visitors and guests and our residents. The idea here is that we've got lots of competing desires and needs in our community. How do you best serve those needs and best desires? We look at all the different desires, we look at our park system plan Paul referenced earlier on, how we meet those demands across our entire system, not just in one location. But in certain spots, it makes sense to put things in certain locations. A good aquatic center in the center of town makes a lot of sense, especially when dealing with visitors coming to town. A golf course, great amenity downtown, is the best use of the property. That's what we're here from our community engagement. But overall, we developed a plan here based on that overall community engagement, not just the loud voices, not just those that we didn't hear from, but everybody in our community had a voice in this process. Even if you weren't part of that stakeholders group, that 35 list, we still thought about what you said and we heard you. So with that, the plan was developed. We shared that information with the City Council on a couple of weeks ago. And the idea here is that we're bringing back forward a final plan for adoption. And again, there's probably some tweaks here we can look at. Paul talked about the semantics of how we go forward and make sure we develop a plan that's implemented, that we can implement over a short period of time for that grant dollars. And really looking long-term what that may be as well. And again, that long-term plan, like I said, is a long-term plan. It may evolve again in the next 5-year review. It might say golf should stay there forever, or it might say expand aquatics once again, or it might say move pickleball off the site and go someplace else. We don't know that answer yet 5 years from now. The community's going to continue to change, and we'll do so for the next 20, 25 years. So with that, I'll introduce Rita Trapp with HKGI. She'll go through the presentation process here, and we'll be available for questions.
All right, good evening again. My name is Rita Trapp. I'm with the consulting firm of HKGI. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you today to talk about the Soldiers Field Master Plan. It's been an engaging process and really a process that has challenged us to think creatively about how do we suggest improvements and time improvements to try and maintain what we knew is the golf course in the short term, but try and look at how does all the long-term goals that the community has as well. As was referenced, the city has nearly finished implementation of the interim recommendations from the 2014 plan. So when we were charged with this new update, the focus was really to try and confirm what the long-term vision was, identify strategies to achieve that vision, and then prioritize what would be completed in the next few years as you do have actual funding available. And that's a fun thing for us is not typical for us to actually have a park plan that we're working on that will see immediate implementation. So that's something that was really a serious consideration as we move forward. So just as a reminder and context builder for everyone, Soldiers Field today has more than 150 acres, has a variety of types of active uses. Obviously the golf course provides a significant use of the property. On the north side there are a lot more active uses such as the memorials, the tennis courts, the track and field, the baseball field, 2 playgrounds, the hockey rinks, and trails. As has been referenced, it is a historical context that's important for the community, and so we do have that as part of the consideration as we move forward. It was originally developed, as you all know, from the American Legion. It was originally 6 holes, and then it became, and then it evolved towards 18 over the years. The river was diverted, so even the original location of the river wasn't the same as it was originally in the park. The drives and the pools are amazingly from the 1936, so a long time, and actually we talked a lot about what is the historical context, what are we trying to retain to really continue the character of Soldiers Field. The 2014 master plan was referenced. This is the graphic from the long-term preferred section of the plan. It talks about the retention of the memorials, enhancing aquatics, improvements to the running track, new trails, modifying the courts and fields, and flexible open space. It also talks about the proposed reduction of the 9-hole course, though it did talk about revisiting that change in 2025. The city went through over the last number of years on improving based on that 2014 plan. So some of the improvements which are listed here including enhancing electrical and water and some of the track elements to support festivals that would be moved to Soldiers Field, tennis improvements, decorative lighting, removing the permanent outfield fence on the east half of the baseball field, and again modifying the track and then installing that gate that kind of separates the neighborhood to the west from Soldiers Field. It was felt that these kind of encompass the short-term improvements, and this next round would look at what do we do into the future over the next 5 years. In this 2016 system plan, we had some recommendations specifically related to Soldiers Field. That plan is actually organized to kind of talk about more in general, but there were 3 areas that were specific to Soldiers Field. One had to do with replacing the pool with a variety of activities like we're talking about today. Looking at facility plans to upgrade the pool, so there's kind of 2 different places where the pool is referenced. And then looking at food and beverage services, so ways to have the concessions at Soldiers Field. These are the only 3 very specific recommendations. If you would study the plan more, there are recommendations that would affect Soldiers Field, but they're talked about in more general, about how facilities should be distributed across the entire system. And that's what staff has referenced, is that we took into consideration where are other facilities located and how does that factor into whether or not they should be at Soldiers Field. We also looked at and examined other plans and studies that were completed by others. So the Discovery Walk and maintaining that corridor between heart of the city in downtown to Soldiers Field, the proposed 6th Street Bridge reconstruction, and then the Golf Evaluation Report. And there's a few more that were included as well. They were just context for us as we started to move forward in examining kind of the existing conditions today. The 2014 master plan did include guiding principles. We did revisit those guiding principles as part of the first phase of community engagement. There were some slight tweaking to the wording, but the general ideas that were contained within the guiding principles have remained the same. So I kind of highlighted some of the important words, things like preserving the park boundary, making it welcoming and inclusive, providing a variety of activities, preserving the memorial areas, trying to be true to the historic design elements, but recognizing the park is not the same as it was when it was first developed. It has evolved over the years to meet the needs of the community, and we may need to continue to evolve it because of new needs or changing needs in the community. Strengthening the access and connections to downtown, making sure we try and engage park users with the river, enhancing signage and wayfinding, providing opportunities for winter use, looking at sustainable design, and considering life cycle costs. Those are all factors that were part of the development of the short-term and long-term recommendations. I do want to touch a little bit on community engagement because I know that was a discussion, particularly with the City Council. There was community engagement conducted kind of at 2 parts of the process. The first one was to really revisit with the community. How are they using the park? What are the needs that we need to address? Where are gaps within the park? The engagement considered, as was referenced already, 12 meetings with more than 35 community groups, a community online survey using your POCO system with more than 1,500 responses, and then Social Pinpoint, which is an online map, and this is a graphic from that where folks were able to put comments on specific geographic locations on the park and provide feedback. Input from that, we use the input from that community engagement to identify 3 concepts. So the goal in the 3 concepts was to try and put together different ideas that may or may not work together to really evaluate. So we used the phase 1 engagement to talk about what are the things that folks thought were important or that we should be exploring. So golf course, 3 options for the golf course, aquatics expansion, pickleball, the arboretum concept, expansion of the tennis court, trail connections, restrooms, parking near the rest playground. Those are some of the examples, and this graphic is just showing you some of the elements that rated highly from folks as things that they were interested in the park, and then we use that to explore some concepts. Phase 2 was to solicit the input on those concepts. So what are the features you like? What don't you like? It included the online survey again, and then pop-up events at different events through the community. You can see a picture of the boards where people were able to write comments on those concepts. These are the 3 concepts. Obviously, it's a little small, but you can kind of see one goes all the way. It's kind of from left to right. The one on the left retains the 18-hole golf course, and this is what we can accomplish. As you can see from here, The golf course has a lot of the space of the park, so we have to put in a lot of the facilities on that northern section. And you can see as you move towards the right, how much, if we do make changes, what we're able to accomplish. So this was just to give people kind of that breadth of what one could look at to really get some feedback. It's nice to put things at different directions to really get better feedback about what's important to folks. So some of the things that we wanted to highlight from the survey, one is that the demographics of those that responded to the survey are a little bit, do match kind of a younger demographic, a little bit more broad in terms of hopefully a broader cross-section of the community. And so that might be reflected in kind of the responses that we're seeing. The goal is that we're trying to respond to as many needs in the community as we can. And there's a lot of different user groups that we're trying to balance. So in the last 12 months, which facilities have you used? The numbers 1 through 7, those are the top 7 responses. So pools, trails, the playground, the pool house, the field, the east playground, and then the golf course. And then it goes down from there. Where you kind of see the break between the second yellow line and down, that's where kind of the drop off is between 7 and 8, just to give a perspective, because I know it's hard to read from far away. We also asked specifically, knowing that this was a topic that has been part of the community discussion, is what is your preference? What do you think should be explored in the final concept related to golf? As you can see, 36% did say that they wanted to retain 18 holes of golf, but that does mean about 64% of folks were interested in exploring other opportunities to have other things rather than golf. So that's something that, again, was put into consideration as we move forward. So when we develop a preferred concept, we are actually balancing a lot of different inputs. It's not just one particular thing. So we use the input obviously from the 2014 master plan. What did the community say then? How does that shape what we think about today? The phase 2 engagement, all the things that I just talked about, and there's more detail if you want to look at the Pilco survey. The guiding principles, so things like the retention of historic layout, probably the community didn't talk a lot about, but that's something that we know is important, and so we needed to take that into consideration, and that affects what we're able to do and where we're able to do things in the park. Basketball courts isn't really something that came up from responses, but we know that that is important to create that welcoming and inclusive park that we're looking for.
Excuse me, how do you know that? You keep saying, well, it wasn't in there, but...
Excuse me, just let her finish, please.
Just a simple question.
Okay. System plan, the system plan kind of looks at how the activities are distributed throughout the system. So pickleball, there's a recommendation for 4 courts in the plan, and that has to do with looking at the entire system rather than looking at this as a tournament facility or one that would have a lot. And tennis was maintained but not expanded. Again, we have to make choices because there's not enough space in Soldiers Field to meet all of the needs, and so we're trying to balance all of those inputs. It's also informed by sustainable design practices where we're trying to retain infrastructure that currently exists. It's true we could take out an entire parking lot and put another facility there, but that costs a lot of money. And so we had to make choices based on the fact that we only have a certain amount of money that we're working with, and so this is the best placement for this facility on a variety of factors, including where is infrastructure already. We want to make sure to preserve infrastructure that has a life expectancy because, again, we don't want to have you have to spend money on things that can be used. We also consider the historical design, and that's something that SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Office, is continuing to review as part of the federal grant, so something that we probably will need to respond to again. And then also looking at the overall expenses to maximize the investments that are made. And I'll talk a little bit more about that element as we talk about revisiting what could happen or how aquatics should evolve, because we did take a look at that after the conversation with the City Council on the 19th. So with that, the master plan, the short-term master plan, the next 3 years, does have a recommendation to retain the 18-hole golf course, but with some modifications to make a little bit more space for some of the other activities in the community, and I have a slide right next that will show that to you. So that's the golf course, and then looking at some trail connections, the downtown river trail connection, which has already been planned for in a separate effort, and so was acknowledged as part of this master plan process. And then a trail connection on the southwest property line, that goes back to the desire for more trail connection to the surrounding neighborhoods and responding to that as well. Relative to the golf course, I know there's been concern, rightly so, for how much impact we're going to have, and we're really trying to not have impact. That's been something that staff has been really adamant about all the way through the process of trying to push us to say, do we really need to do it? Is there a way to do it differently so that we don't have to? This is the most recent graphic and analysis about impacts. We did our best to kind of show hole 1 would have a tee box moved to the south to give us the space for the aquatics. Hole 3 would have the tee box moved as well, and the trees removed, and the alignment of the hole would definitely be different. And then 9 has adjusted the green. Right now, we think that this is what we can do to try and minimize impacts to golf. Obviously, that's something that will be taken into consideration at the next stage of the process. As a reminder, this is a master plan. The level of design that you need to really understand what you're going to do is not part of a master plan process. That's part of a concept and schematic design. So we've done our best, probably done more than typically one would do in a master plan. But those are questions that will have to be fully answered when the actual design is conducted for the aquatics and for any improvements in this area. So going back to master plan improvements, the short term, looking at expanded aquatics, the facility is proposed to be expanded to about 70 to 80,000 square feet. So it's double its size. The bathhouse would be proposed to be renovated, which has been an item that's been talked about obviously for more than a decade. And then the facilities that initially is proposed to be considered are the lap pool, splash pad, shallow play pool, deep water play pool, and the lazy river. That's just the starting point for discussion. Again, that's what your next phase would be, is to really narrow that down and decide what are the elements that are important, how does that factor together, how does that look, and then also making sure we have the amenities that make it an enjoyable experience for folks that are using it. Oh, I suppose I should stop here. So these are just some images and some of these we saw in the video at the beginning of the meeting. So additional improvements talked about in the short term include the East Playground. The East Playground has a 4,500 square foot inclusive play expansion and a renovation of the East Picnic Building. This was mentioned in the grant specifically. The West Playground, it is beloved, and we've heard it's beloved, and it's in good shape. So no changes there, other than we know that parking is a little bit of an issue, particularly about safe parking right immediate to the playground. So just adding a parking area right along Gibbs Drive to make it a little bit safer experience. The West Picnic area, a new picnic shelter with restrooms and a small nature play area. That is also part of the grant discussion. And putting it separate from the East Playground to give people other options within the park. Adding 2 basketball courts, and then one fitness circuit station, and that's related to an investment already by the folks that are constructing the law enforcement memorial. So we found a location for it with the goal that it could be expanded in the future. And then we move to the long term. One element of the long term is to realign the historic access drive on the west. And making sure that kind of has that historic element. If you look back at the picture that I chose at the beginning, that's why I chose the picture, as it kind of mirrors what we're talking about here. It includes the reduction of golf to 9 holes and the creation of the Arboretum in the area that is converted from the golf course. The addition of a hammock grove by the playground area as a feature that is a new thing that folks are looking for, particularly younger teenagers. Yes?
I actually have safety concerns with that, with some of the issues that we have dealt with in a limited scope, even with the city of Rochester size, with the homeless encampments along the less accessible city parks and trails. And to me, that does, as somebody who has gone out as a single female, or has my daughter go out doing running, I mean, there's certain areas where I don't encourage her to run, because I do know that people tend to congregate there.
Right.
And
so there's 2 things. Well, I mean, that is a valid concern.
And the other thing is, I know that our community service officers and people like that are already busy doing various things around the community, and I don't want to end up introducing it. I know that the whole idea of hammocks are very fun. My kids are very avid and they love doing that, but, so, I'm sorry.
Let's
She
get,
asked me,
let's
sorry.
get the, through the presentation and then we'll, write down our questions and comments and then we'll ask them at the end.
Alright, I'll come back to that.
Thank you. Yep. Adding the 6 pickleball courts has been discussed, west of the west parking area. This also includes the expansion of the west parking area. As there are more amenities, it's likely that additional parking will be needed. Expanding the fitness circuits in the area that we had already put the initial one when we have that donation. At some point, the west playground probably will have lived its useful life and it will need to be changed, and at that time probably will be revisited, but at this point in time people have talked about an adventure type playground as something that they would be desired, so it would be a change from what's there today. Again, I anticipate that would be revisited before the actual playground design would be created. And then adding an accessory garden adjacent to the nature play area, so kind of expanding the nature play elements to really make that a little bit more of a robust location. You currently have 2 playgrounds. It's nice to have play structures near any type of shelter, and so that's why it's looked at as an expansion. And it also works well with the Arboretum concept. That's one of the reasons that nature play in this location is a nice synergy with the Arboretum to the south. And then continuing on, long-term elements, the new warming house to provide service to the track and the hockey rinks. A south picnic ground. This is a way to activate the area all the way to the south. If we are going to have the Arboretum, folks may enjoy having another way of accessing the south side of the river and the park. Also doing improvements to Broadway Avenue. It's currently being used. It could have a little bit more love to be more of an entrance to the park. A great lawn area, which would be open play, flexible, between the shelter and the Arboretum. And then one of the guiding principles is try and increase access to the river. One way to do that is to have some type of plaza with a picnic shelter so people can actually be at the river and have a destination that's on the river. And then one other element talked about is the potential for indoor-outdoor curling with a parking expansion. This would be located next to or part of the clubhouse. That's something that is shown. It could happen, but would really need the private investment. And so it's something that we want to acknowledge as the synergy between the clubhouse and a curling facility makes sense in terms of year-round use, but recognize that that's not really in the funding right now. But that's something that would make sense. But it would come with a parking expansion likely, and so we've tied the 2 together. So in terms of a cost estimate, the elements that we talked about in the short-term plan have a cost estimate of about $18.5 million. And then the long-term has another nearly $16 million. So there's a lot of investments that would be needed for Soldiers Field, and we do have breakdowns provided, and we can provide more detail if needed. Right now, the short-term funding includes the federal grant that was referenced, state grant, park dedication fees, the park referendum, and DMC funding. Some of those have timelines, which is one of the reasons that we really want to have this discussion today and continue to have the discussion in order to meet timelines, as well as in order to make sure we have the pool available for as many seasons as we can. We need to start moving because it's amazing how fast the time goes to go through schematic design, concept design, construction, bidding, all of those elements. So that's one of the reasons that we're talking about the short term in particular tonight. So I want to just summarize, it was mentioned a little bit, the City Council review. Generally, it felt like they were supportive of the short term concept elements, aquatics, winter activities, the basketball courts, the playgrounds. There was a request to continue exploration of commercial partnerships, especially related to concessions. As was referenced, not supportive of changes to golf. Additional community feedback at the September 20th public hearing. Most who attended, my understanding, I was not there, staff provided this information. The requests were to leave the golf untouched. There were positive impacts to golf highlighted. There were a few individuals who supported other uses besides golf. And then swim club representatives indicated an interest in maybe being willing to scale back. We've always assumed the Soldiers Field would have a 50-meter pool to meet the needs of the swim association and the needs of the community, but maybe there's an opportunity to look at something different. That really would be part of the next element when we're looking at schematic design and concept design, just because of the way that that specific element would have to be looked at in its totality for the aquatics. One element that we pulled together, just new information, general usage levels, just to give people a perspective. Events bring about nearly 35,000 people to Soldiers Field. Swimming had 27,600 folks over the, I think it was 75 days, do I remember that right? I just wrote it, you think I remember. So, that it was in operations. Golf had 20,000 rounds, and then sports, this includes a variety of elements, about 10,000 folks, so programmed activities like the youth soccer programs, like football, and then there are a number of uses that obviously we don't have counts for. How many people use the playgrounds or tennis? So it's just important to recognize that there's a lot of usage at the park, and we're trying to balance the needs of all of those different uses as best we can and try and make sure to support them. As I referenced, golf has been evolving from the beginning. At Soldiers Field, modifications for golf have involved a lot of different elements, moving tees and greens, removing bunkers, adding bunkers, those types of things. Changes have been made due to the river and the dam construction. The pro shop has changed multiple times. I guess staff's message, my message is, yes, we're trying to minimize impacts, but the reality is everything in the park has changed over time to meet continuing needs of the community. So we're trying to minimize those impacts, but there's not a lot of space to provide things that serve other users just besides golf, and we're doing our best, but we need the space that we've proposed as part of the short-term plan in order to really implement what we understand the community has been asking for. We did also take a look at alternative aquatics locations. These are things that we actually had always considered but had already put aside, but we thought maybe it would be helpful for folks to understand how we got where we got as to why expanding aquatics in its current location makes more sense than moving to other locations. Some locations were mentioned, the baseball field. If we moved it up to the baseball field, one, there are baseball users, and my understanding from staff is that is used 4 or 5 days a week. It's not like it's sitting empty. There are users, so they would be impacted. But also, we would have to do a new bathhouse and support structure because it's not near those things. So all of those things would have to be constructed new. There'd be utility adjustments because there's actually utility lines running underneath it. The parking area on that side would have to be expanded. One benefit of where it is currently is we have the benefit of 2 parking lots that we can use to service aquatics. If you're all on one side of the park, parking becomes more of an issue. Adjacent to the YMCA was also asked about. Again, likely we'd need a new bathhouse and support structures, parking area. There's also been a request to reconsider and just go west and do a linear aquatics facility. Certainly we can look at that as we do the schematic design, but there are some concerns. One of them being a park needs to be designed for lifeguard and operation. So safety concerns, you need sight lines. There's certain ways that you need to organize the amenities within the aquatics to help best serve families with kids of different ages. So there also would be a new parking area needed because we would basically be taking up the parking that we had, that is already there. So again, we're ripping out an existing infrastructure and have to replace it. So the alternative locations likely would add anywhere from $800,000 to $8 million to an already $10 million improvement. So one of the reasons that we think that this is still the best location has to do with all of those infrastructure that's already there and the costs of ripping up and moving things or expanding elements. With that, I can answer questions. I don't, Chair, I don't know what the comment was in the public, so so if you wanted to answer that, we need it repeated, because that one I wasn't sure about, which is why I didn't incorporate it into my presentation, because I wasn't sure how to answer it. So it's up to you. I just wanted to note that I know I didn't answer it, but I don't exactly know what I was answering.
Yeah.
So.
Let's start with questions from the board. Board questions or comments from the board, but let's keep our questions and comments to the short-term master plan. That has been, I don't want to say approved, but the city council was in support of the short-term master plan. And then after we have the discussion about that or a vote on that, let's move to the long term. So questions, comments about the short-term master plan? And please use your microphones.
So just clarify, if the Hammock Grove is on the long term and not the short term, then I'm not gonna worry about that at this moment in time?
Yep, we'll come back to
Okay.
that.
Then, so a couple of things that I have to wonder a little bit about when you talk about sightlines in aquatics. And when I look at the schematic where it shows the bigger pool and then the lazy river with the trees, which very much obscure sight lines on that lazy river. And if you've ever spent time with kids and people on a lazy river, you know very easily that could become a problem. Obviously, I would not doubt that the swim club would adequately staff any facility that they're gonna be in charge of doing that. I have no doubts about that. But I think that you would still run into similar issues of sightlines even with the way things are currently laid out, especially if you're putting taller trees or things in the middle of that lazy river.
Yes, I don't disagree with you, and I just, as a reminder, the next stage is a schematic design with an aquatic specialist who knows how these should be laid out exactly. But one element is the lazy river is intentionally farther back, so that if you have families with younger children, you are more in the front and you're not necessarily nearer to some of those elements. And those are some of the things that have to be worked out in the schematic design, is exactly how they should be laid out. We also, I just want to note, kept the pool where it was. That may not be the most advantageous design. And so these are all elements that have to come as part of the concept and schematic design process.
And then this is speaking certainly towards the short term. Now, I took my own takeaway back from the swim team's response that they gave us. And to me, it almost sounded like some of these additional elements that did create that bigger footprint were some of the things that they thought if they had two pools, they could locate elsewhere, as opposed to having to have all of the, you know, great big slides and lazy rivers and everything sitting at Soldiers Field. Now, I may have misunderstood that, but that was kind of my impression. I didn't get the impression that they were looking to scale back having a 50-meter lap pool.
I'll just share a comment with you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Is that, yes, the aquatics folks did share that sentiment at the open house, the public hearing. They are one stakeholder amongst many, and I would tell you that the engagement we had throughout the community about the elements we have shown in the aquatics was robustly saying we want more and more and more. So more lazy river, more shallow play, more splash, more slides, etc. So I think while they may have shared their sentiments, that's not what we heard from the community across the board.
And then part of our discussion too, Vicki and board, will be if we don't want to do it here, where will that be? So.
And I think that that's kind of what my point is if we're gonna do a really top-notch aquatics facility that has the slides and the lazy rivers and all of these really super fun things, is our community better served by allocating some of the more straight up recreational, where we're talking about that engagement play and it's going to like a water park for the day? Are we better suited in putting all those eggs in one basket and then maybe having that second pool with a slightly different focus with some of the fun elements, but not necessarily everything? Maybe a nice splash pad and some other stuff. That's kind of where my thought is on that.
If I made 2 points, one is that if we start looking at taking those aquatic features away from Soldiers Field, you will jeopardize the federal grant. There's no question about that. So again, if that were even allowed, I would say that, well, again, what we heard from the community members in our engagement process was that we want these things in our community. Did they say specifically soldiers? This is where we proposed it to be at.
Okay.
They also said we want 2 pools or 3 pools. So they want more of aquatics, is what we're showing here today.
Okay.
Dick?
Well, what I'd like to do, make a motion, okay? That the park board direct the staff and any retained consultants to study the alternatives excluding Soldiers Field golf course land from an aquatic facility in the Soldiers Field area or any other location.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the motion.
I'll discuss. I think this seems to me that we heard an awful lot and it felt like we were trying to put 10 gallons into a 5-gallon container. A lot of stuff going back and forth between the short and long term So I know I'm getting older, but trying to keep some of that straight was difficult. I would have liked to have the opportunity to talk with some more of the aquatics people, because I spent 12 years on the city council, and I know when we talk about aquatics, the one thing that hurts aquatics in this community, and I don't care if it's Casson, Stewartville, St. Charles, or any other, is season. Weather does its bit, and it's hard to make a go of aquatics if you can't use it. So one of the things that I would like staff to look at is, do we necessarily have to continue to say outdoor pool? There's enough new technology out there where you could dome it and have doors that opened up in the summertime and shut in the winter time, so maybe you can use it 4 more months a year than you currently do. So the reason I seconded Dick's motion was, I think there's other options we can look at. I'd like to see us look more to the west. I understand sight lines, but I also understand you have to have lifeguards, whether you're in a lazy river next to a swimming pool, or you have the lazy river shallow area on its own. Those still have to have lifeguards based on occupancy use. It's not that you can use one lifeguard to watch 2, 3 different areas. If I had a little kid out there right now, I'd be concerned about the safety of that child. The other thing too is, I think if we look at the parking situation on the west side of Soldiers Field, we took out a ball field, and if you're looking for parking for that west playground, if you go north of the tennis courts, that could give you the opportunity to put some diagonal parking in, maybe some additional parking that would offset what you need in the for the aquatics. And the other thing is too, look, we heard from a group tonight that I hadn't heard from before I came on here, and I realize I'm the junior member of this park commission, even though I've probably been around government for a really, really long time in comparison. But the pickleball people, tonight's the first time I've heard as many of them come forward as we've had. And that's a real question, as well as Roy's comment about connectivity of our parks. He's absolutely right. One of the big concerns I have is, how are we hooking up Soldiers Field to the east? It was mentioned, but really never talked into any kind of ideas or thoughts on how we hook Soldiers Field up to Kmart, because that area is all going to be developed. How we hook it up into Ampey, that area is all going to be developed, as well as the Mayo parking to the north. So there's a lot of questions I have, and we know too that in this community that downtown is becoming much more populated with the new apartments and people moving in, and the idea and the addition of more apartments, there's going to even be more. So one of the things I really think, and I think Vicki hit on it, is instead of trying to go ahead and doing some of these things, let's make sure we're doing the right thing so that we're being the best stewards of the taxpayer dollars and grant money. The grant money, folks, comes from you and I as well. It may have a tag on it that says federal government, but that's your tax dollar. And so I think we need to consider, what are we doing with this whole process, so this community, not only just Rochester, but the entire community, the St. Charles, Stewartville, all the people get the biggest bang for their buck. And again, tonight we heard about disabled being able to walk Soldiers Field. There isn't another flat golf course around. And I think that makes good points. The problem is many times people worry about the dollar, but we have to worry about the community and how do we serve the most people. When you listen to all the things that we've heard tonight, there's a lot of wants, and there ain't enough money to take care of all those wants. But I think I appreciate what staff has done, and the consultants, they've worked really hard, but I got a lot of questions on how we can do some of this stuff to make it the best thing for the community.
Jeff?
This has been an ongoing issue for the last few years. We've talked about this time and again, about having a vision for aquatics or a vision for golf. and they're gonna run together. So pick which one you do first, but there are risks to that. And there are risks to writing grants when we don't know where we should go with these things. And I can see a lot of cost savings in keeping things where they are. And everybody out there needs to recognize that all of this costs money, that moving the bathhouses, that moving the parking lots, that all these grand ideas will cost significantly more than what was on the screen. And so I just want people to be really aware of that. I've been for looking at a more comprehensive aquatics program, and I would be in support of that, but only with a friendly amendment to explore an MOU with the school district. They have 7 pools or 6 pools that are sitting unused all the time, that used to be used for swimming lessons, that are not used on the weekends, that are not used necessarily on the nights, and that are seasonal for their swim season. And it just seems like a ridiculous use of government resources, and that got closed down because of money too. I'm all for looking at, 3 seasons, 4 seasons pools and all that good stuff. We do put a risk on that. And I also think the other thing, we had budgeted $125,000 for splash pads. Lincolnshire is now costing $720,818. And so the cost inflations of aquatics is astronomical, especially with the regulations that require a bathroom on site. So electric, plumbing, more extensive sanitation and things like that, yeah. So I think we need to do that. I also will say that to keep this moving forward, because we can sit and talk about this for the next 5 years and do nothing. And so I would also support moving the short-term plan forward. Second piece, I want to talk about this, is that the Gulf community needs to recognize that in some regards, this is kicking the can down the road. There is still the question of whether it should be 18 holes. I heard a lot of nice stories about including people that are sick in the Gulf, including people that are a familial thing where Soldiers Field is a great course. I think that's all great and well, but I also think about all the other people that are excluded from that space too, by having that much space eaten up by Gulf. And what we're committing to then is having that discussion again in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. 2028 for sure. But we are just kicking the can on a difficult decision down the road, and I just want to say that out loud, because that is, I'd rather get it moving and get it done one way or the other. And we'll see where that takes us. But I would support that with the friendly amendment that we specifically explore with the school district what can be done about utilizing those pools and those facilities that are also all taxpayer dollars, if we're gonna do that. And I guess I appreciate all the work staff did. You guys have done some heavy lifting. On the same token, that's also something that we've been talking about for years, is the need to have a vision for aquatics. And what are we gonna do? And can't have having 2 pools 2 miles apart doesn't make sense. But that's a decision the community can make later.
I was just gonna say, I appreciate what Jed had to say, especially about contacting the school district regarding the use of pools. And that's why I've said it before, that we need a comprehensive aquatics vision for the city that includes all the facilities. We lost the facilities at the YMCA, for example. But at this point, I would like to also, I'm concerned about kicking the can down the road, and I would like to move forward. So I would be against the motion.
Thank you. I would like to talk about with packet page 258, which is talking where the golf tee boxes are moved. As I read it, hole 1 and hole 9 are, some things are moved nominally. There's not a lot of changes, but some yardage changes. But hole 3 is drastically changed and made a lot smaller. But I also see that the tee box on hole 3 is right on the edge of that expanded aquatics, and moving it, if we don't put that new picnic shelter and nature play in, then we haven't really changed hole 3 either. But then my other question is to the greater board, and I know the audience we have here is the changing of one hole worth giving up an expanded aquatics section? So, and I don't think with the numbers of people, like we had 20,000 people at the pool and about 20,000 rounds of golf, one hole change doesn't seem like a big sacrifice if the whole community is served better. I understand the golfers might have contention with that, but I don't think one hole sacrifice, and it's still there, it's still playable, it's just a very short change, is worth losing the momentum on getting the pool that we've been talking about for a long time. And the other part then too is we can go ahead and with this plan and just adjust what Dick's motion was to just not make any changes. But that does drastically change aquatics, and I don't want to stop our forward momentum, and I don't want to give up $5 million from a federal grant because we're changing one hole.
Is it?
We'll adjust to it.
I was gonna say, would it be possible to get a plan potentially drawn up where you maybe have that aquatics go more into a little where that nature play earmark would be? The one question I actually had is, you know, having another picnic pavilion with bathrooms and everything else over on that side there, to me, I look at that and, you know, when my kids even would have been little, I would have been like, yeah, we can just, if the bathrooms were open at the bathhouse somehow to the public, I would have been like, yeah, we can just walk over there. It's not that terribly far away. So I don't know if various places where they may put a bathroom or a picnic pavilion can be adjusted in that, any way, shape, or form in that. It's just, because if it was just the one hole, I think it's a little bit easier sell, but I don't know how easy it is for the design people to make those adjustments. We can sit here in armchair, quarterback all we want. You guys are the ones that understand how that works. Mike?
I just may, I would just share that this next phase of design is really what we're talking about for that detailed design, to say can we change, what can we move, and what can remain. And until we get to that point, and that level of detail, I can't answer that question.
Others? Dick, would you restate your motion?
We've been wordsmithing.
Thank
We'll
you.
be revisiting again. Restate your motion.
I would still state my motion as is. This is dealing with the long term.
Right. So restate it though, because there's more to it.
That the park board direct the staff and any retained consultants to study our other alternative, excluding Soldiers Field Golf Course land, period. No, nothing with the golf course. For the aquatic facility in Soldiers Field area or other locations. Listening to Mr. Shaughnessy, he said that was very doable, and talked to the aquatics people, it is doable. It just seems to me that just leave the golf course alone and do, the lazy river. I'm not sure we need the lazy river. As Vicki said, maybe we do that at another park or whatever. I think we talked to Mike about doing it out at Cascade. That won't work out there, so that's my motion. I think we have a second already.
Yeah, we do. Any further discussion on the motion?
I would just point out that Dick's motion removes the review in 5 years so that we aren't kicking this down the road. I'm somewhat, and it does, and what he would probably be amenable to is making it a more comprehensive look at aquatics and an MOU, so I'm in favor of that portion. I'm having a hard time with the golf piece, but,
We can kick the can down the road, we do the 5 or 10.
I know, I didn't say it, just said,
I think that the hard thing, and I think it was Mr. Sutherland that actually made mention of it at the public hearing last month. But, and one of the things that's always, I've struggled, so since I came on the park board, this stuff is, I think, predated all of us that currently sit on the board. These original 2014 master plans, some of the staff were probably around, but none of us on the park board were. And, well, yeah, you weren't in this capacity, so we're not counting that. The bigger piece of it is that none of us here dreamed up any of these initial plans. We've been, just like staff has, just like everyone else is, we have been trying to take feedback in from the community and figure out, okay, this is in front of us, what do we do with it? And one of the things that really, we want to make sure that the park is for everyone, absolutely. And it's much like, we want to say, okay, the park is going to be for everyone, but we already have people that are invested in one thing. And it is, as much as we want to say we want to be fair and equal, it is, we are going to have to potentially take something away from somebody else. Now, I don't know anybody that feels really good about ever doing that. I mean, it would be like saying, oh, yes, you have this toy that you like, and we're gonna have to go sell it so we can give somebody else another toy that they like. And I think that that's kind of where, I don't know about the rest of the park board, I know that's where I very much struggle, because we wanna be able to do everything for everyone as best as we can. And it's hard sometimes to rebuild what's already there. So if you're gonna take something away, you wanna make sure that that is something that's gonna be done for good. And I would always err on the side of conserving and making sure that that is the right decision before just going ahead and doing it. And maybe it seems a little like kicking the can down the road, but if there is an intentional plan to make a determination, and considering that the golf situation is on the table for the next month's board meeting, I think to make that determination right here and now might be slightly premature on that. That's the one thing, and that's on on something completely separate, and maybe one of the people from the association can give me feedback. Okay, so no separate issue right now?
no,
Okay, I'll just
no separate idea.
Okay. The one thing, and this is completely on a different thing before I forget about it, as far as the pickleball stuff goes, my question, I guess, to the pickleball community is, where is their priority? Is their priority in having a very large regional facility with at least 12 to 15 courts? Or is their priority on having pickleball at Soldiers Field and at Cook Park? And I have a thought as to where the answer is, but I'm not going to suppose I'm a mind reader to know.
And do we have the money is also the question.
Yeah, and so that's kind of one of the questions in that case, but that's not necessarily something.
I have a question for Dick or whoever else. If we don't change anything at Soldiers Field, we leave the 18 holes as is, we still don't have the money to sustain all 4 courses as is, and do the updates, and do everything. So we are saying we're not gonna touch Soldiers Field. The next meeting we have with golf, we are gonna be making decisions to cut elsewhere. Or to say, put it back on city council and say, you've gotta give us more money because we decided we're not gonna cut anything, but then we don't have any money to make the Eastwood Golf Clubhouse changes, or that horrible road into Northern Hills. So I don't wanna cut anything. I want everybody to have everything. I want 4 magical pools, I want a pickleball, I want everything. But we have a budget to deal with, and so I just want us to make sure we are doing what we think is best, knowing that there will be consequences, whatever. If we move through hole 3, that's a consequence. If we give up aquatics funding and money, that's a consequence. So it might mean that we get rid of Hadley Creek if we're gonna keep Soldiers Field as is. So I just wanna make sure everybody's thinking all of that through before we make any votes. But Dick or Mark?
Yeah, just last meeting we had, we talked about 3-4 different options of where dollars could come from. And I think that goes, whatever we vote on, staff would have to go back and take a look at that, look at the fee structure, things of that nature, and then they'd have to come back with a recommendation. I think the fact is they talked about it, so I think once they know the direction we're heading, they can make the necessary adjustments. So my feeling is whatever we decide, they know what their options are and they can come back with whatever they feel is necessary to make that work.
That sounds very nice, but that means cut somewhere else.
Well, it depends on what they say, because they talked about it if they raise the season passes. And
right, that's part of it.
But everybody talked about what a bargain it was, so if they paid more, that would offset some of that cost.
Yeah.
Right, so that's what we would, Lisa, what my feeling is, what staff is looking for is direction. The direction, are we gonna keep 4 courses, or are we gonna reduce one of the courses to a 9-hole, or all of them? That gives them an idea of what they have to work with to plan for the future.
Jeff?
Found another one. I'm gonna make, first, I wanna make clear, I wanna make a friendly amendment to Dick's proposal that it would include a comprehensive review of aquatics with, a discussion with the school districts about a MOU for more swimming lessons. That requires acceptance of that. And does it require a second too, or just acceptance?
No, friendly, he
Just
has to accept it.
friendly. And then I'm also gonna offer a counter motion, which Dick's will be voted on first, but the other motion would be, not, it's keep 18 and do the aquatics, and then my motion would be to move the temporary plan forward as staff recommended, also asking for a comprehensive review of city aquatics with a discussion and dialogue with the school board or the school district to see if there's an MOU that can be put in place to open those pools back down. So I guess I'm offering 2 choices, and then there's more discussion, or otherwise we can vote, see which way this goes.
Yeah.
The only question I have, or only comment I have is that at all the meetings that golfers had, they all agreed to increase their dues. You know, and it showed, I think that 5 years out, it was, the CIP was minimal. But not, I mean, it's big money, but still minimal. So they are willing to speak up with their pocketbooks, which I think is important, because it is one of the biggest revenues that we have in Rochester, that basically almost pays for itself. I think the last 2 years it did. Okay. Thank you.
Vicki, you have something?
I was going to at least make a little bit of a knowledge statement in case Chad didn't know this. I know that during the swim seasons, the pools are not typically unused completely on the weekends. The swim teams do tend to have Saturday practices, at least some of them do. But the other piece of it is, and they sometimes will utilize them during the summer months. The one thing I would though ask, and this would be also to talk to the swim club, because I do know the swim club will rent in the lap pools some of that space. at this time. I suspect that when they complete the Century Pool this upcoming winter, that will probably have a prime draw. The biggest thing that I am curious about, and I don't have a clue on, is if the middle school pools have now been drained and if the schools have already determined future use for that space. I don't think those are really on the table. So, Paul?
Yeah, I just wanted to provide some comments just based on feedback we received, and then another reminder of the process we've gone through. We are all for partnership and collaboration with the schools. We're not opposed to that at all. I think though we've already established the demand for outdoor aquatics in the Parks and Recreation system. And so that has been confirmed by every step we've taken in the community engagement as well, that there is a desire for an enhanced aquatic outdoor facility. The video you saw at the beginning of our meeting today, that there's no dispute from our team on any of those features that they showed that are needed in Rochester. So I just wanted to be careful about how, or at least express my feelings about being cautious about the path we take from here, because I think it's been mentioned by several board members already, we have a pretty strong voice from the community that this facility that we have proposed, the changes we have proposed in the short-term plan for Soldiers Field is in line with the desires of the community. So, thank you.
Any other discussion before we vote on Dick's motion? His friendly motion.
No, then I motioned, yeah.
His counter motion.
We have to vote this for or against first before we get to yours. So seeing no further discussion, Dick, I would love you said it one more time because it was a lot. Can you say it into the microphone, please?
That the park board directs the staff and any retained consultants to study other alternatives, excluding Soldiers Field Golf Course land, for the aquatic facility in the Soldiers Field area or other locations.
With a friendly amendment of, Paul, did you have something real quick?
I just want to be clear, does that put that would be no changes to golf, that would be off limits if this motion passes? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm asking, yes. And that we would not bring that back until, just take it off the board. Just leave the golf course there. No 5 or 10-year review, just take it off the chart.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
I didn't hear enough, so, can we just do a roll call? Chad, aye or nay?
Nay.
Aye. Aye.
Nay?
I'm gonna have to say nay right this moment.
Nay.
It does not carry. Chad, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we kick the can down the road, as much as we don't like doing it. But, okay, so I make a motion that we move forward with the interim plan and that we review aquatics with discussions with the school so that we can really, quite honestly, come to a conclusion on what to do with Silver Lake and the other opportunities that are needed and facilities that are needed. But this would keep Soldiers Field moving in the right direction. Yeah, sure.
So essentially approve the short-term plan with the addition of contacting the school board.
And I would add that I'm interested in going whatever
I'm gonna
direction.
get a second before we go. Is there a second?
Can you restate it exactly?
I motion that we move the short-term, keep saying interim, short-term plan forward with a review in 5 years and that we direct staff to review a citywide comprehensive plan that meets the needs of Rochester's aquatics needs, that meets Rochester's aquatics needs.
Is there a second?
Can you explain what review is?
Let's get a second and then we can discuss. Is there a second? There is no second. So that means there is no motion.
So, the one thing that I guess I wonder, due to what Mike said, as far as the specifics of the footprints with the aquatics and the kind of the nitty gritty of the specific layouts needing to be in the thing, is there a way to move this forward with the request to see whether we could be able to get the aquatics amenities in with an absolute minimal impact to the Gulf? And that might be a zero impact, but it doesn't have to be a zero impact. But I'd be very interested to see that. I mean, I understand, like, say they could figure out how to expand it to the west. Because I think that was the part that I don't like about, I didn't necessarily like what Dick's thing is. To me, it sounds like that the aquatic stuff would then not move forward, or at least that was what I was getting from that.
What would have to happen is this would have to pass, and then the next phase, when they do the planning, would be the group that would actually tell you if it could or could not. Correct? Looking for an answer from down the other end.
Yes, correct. I think in all clarity and transparency, there is gonna be a slight impact on those two holes for sure. I think that as you expand south, if we're trying to keep, a full lap pool in that we got currently, that drives kind of that sizing. If the aquatics folks say, you know what, we don't need that full 50-meter pool, we can reshape that or change that design a little bit, that may have a positive impact on golf, or less of an impact on golf. But we don't.
Well, the only other note I would have is, we certainly can have on the table looking towards the west. It may mean that you don't get one of your aquatics facilities, like the Lazy River or the splash pad or Cicero, because we're investing in the movement of the parking lot. So all of those trade-offs can be on the table. It just is going to mean, there's no way to, as you said, there's no way to do it all, and we're going to have to make choices that impact some group in this area. And we're trying to minimize as best we can.
But maximize the benefit.
Correct. So that's what, yes.
And so that, to me, that's where I would like to see. I would like to see this go forward. I would like to see, like, where our options are with the aquatics. And, if we can make the impacts from the golf perspective more minimal, I think that's great. But if it can't be done, when we get to the nitty gritty on the design plans, that's when we have to make that decision. Because I would like to see it move forward with every effort to conserve as much of the stuff. It sounds like they've already adjusted it, so that's kind of where I am.
If we look at what it says on packet page 219, the park board action requested, adoption of short-term Soldiers Field master plan. Direct parks team to utilize the long-term Soldiers Field master plan to guide improvements that do not impact the 18 golf holes. I think that's what you were getting to before. Acknowledge that the Soldiers Field master plan should be reviewed again in 2028 to affirm elements of the plan and provide opportunity to respond to community needs. As it's written, I don't see an issue. Does anybody want to make a motion to?
I'll make a motion to adopt the recommendation as requested.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Now discussion on the motion.
Friendly amendment to include the aquatics review.
I would accept that. I think it would be good to, at some point in time, see if we could set up a stakeholder meeting with the interested parties within the city of Rochester, be it the swim club, be it any parent groups or whatever that are looking for aquatic stuff. It'd be useful maybe to do it a study session or something, or even just have a subcommittee on that.
Any other discussion on the motion?
So we're going out 5 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Seeing, oh, Marty, did you have something else?
I'd back up here. So we're kicking the can down the road 5 years.
Well, we're going with the initial short-term plan that city council also agrees with. And then we're gonna talk about the long-term plan, which will,
Okay, so
again, be.
And then the
reviewed in
long-term
2020.
plan doesn't mean we have to wait 5 years, it just means we have to do it in the next 5 years.
No, what I want to be clear on the motion is that we're gonna go with the short-term plan and are our hands tied for 5 years. I don't
No.
believe that was the motion.
No, but we've set our priorities if we go with that. We've set like the budgeting priorities and what's gonna happen first, second, third, fourth, which is on that spending page.
Okay, I just wanted,
Somewhere.
there was a comment over there, and we're pushing out 5 years, and that's not what I understood. I didn't want our hands tied for 5 years.
No,
No.
it just prioritizes the things in the phase one.
Okay.
Seeing no further discussion, we'll call a vote. All in,
What's the motion exactly?
as written on, adoption of the short-term Soldiers Field master plan. Direct Parks team to utilize the long-term Soldiers Field master plan to guide improvements that do not impact the 18 golf holes. Acknowledgement that the Soldiers Field master plan should be reviewed again in 2028 to affirm elements of the plan or provide opportunity to respond to community needs. And that we direct staff to do a aquatics review and explore a memorandum of understanding with the school system, Rochester Public School System. Any further discussion?
Can I, one point of clarification, does that prioritize the aquatics over the golf to shorten the holes?
No, it does not.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Seeing no further discussion, we'll call a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And that gets us to, hold on. Soldiers Field, there's a second page, let me flip to it, hold on. I would actually love to take a break. Would you be okay, Word?
Before we do, can
Yes.
I just wanna make sure, Kelly, did you get the vote? The,
5-1.
Yeah.
okay,
I did.
thanks.
Mr.
Okay,
Bilderbaum.
we're gonna take a 5-minute break. Thank you for the break, I appreciate that. And we are back to, there is the request for park board action, Soldiers Field Master Plan short-term implementation, and there is another, park board action requested. I do wanna bring up, our lawyer reminded us that side conversations need to be on microphone if we're gonna have them. So either we need to not have them or we need to pick up the microphone and talk, and I did that as well. So, there is, I know, I'll use my teacher face if you want. Park board action requested is to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute necessary documents associated with retaining the HKGI team for design services associated with the improvements outlined with the federal grant, state grant, associated DMC and other funding. Cost for the work outlined is the $256,000 plus reversals. Essentially, that's just saying we need to fill out the paperwork to get everybody on board and move forward to the next stage of concept design. So, is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the motion.
All right,
Vicki?
this has nothing to do with any of the quality, this is a purely curiosity question on my part. Is there not any teams in Rochester or any places in Rochester that do this kind of work? Not necessarily for this, but like just looking to continue to reinvest in our own community. I did look, I didn't really see any, but I was curious if there were.
So the answer is no, no one locally here in Rochester. We do try to stay within Minnesota when we do
Yeah.
look at firms, but again, and that's not always possible. We go through a competitive process in many cases to see what
Okay.
skill sets we need. So again, there are a
Purely
team that we-
curiosity's
yep.
sake on that one, and also to have it on the record that that is something that potentially was considered in the past.
Any other discussion on the motion? Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none? We'll call a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And that leads us to the Silver Lake Master Plan. And it looks like Mike is going to be presenting.
If I may, just a point for information for you related to the last item you just talked about. And that was, doing two things at once, sorry. We are engaging with our community members, about 10 members, 11 members of our committee for stakeholders starting Thursday on the aquatics discussion already. We were planning that in anticipation or hoping that you would make approval. It's a proper representation of everybody from young, old, immigrant, business member, LGBTQ, culturally diverse, just a whole wide gamut of population that we're engaging to get the best aquatics that we can out of this space. So I just want to share that. And now I'm going to join with Carrie from our other firm, Sakura Robinson, and there she is. Can you hear us, Carrie?
Yes, I can.
Perfect, you're coming through awesome. Just a quick lead in then for Carrie. Just as I mentioned on Soldiers Field Aquatics, or Soldiers Field Master Plan, we went through a long series of engagement with this particular plan. This is the first plan we've done here in the park in my tenure, and frankly, the park department in a long, long time. There's been no master plan since the original inception of the park itself. So again, lots of engagement again through the community, both pop-up events, surveys, online mapping tools. Similar to what we saw in Soldiers Field, we had the same things happening here along with stakeholder groups and focus groups. And again, these input sessions and folks that are participating with us are sharing their thoughts, their concerns, their desires for our community park, and that is helping to shape this entire area. So with that, Carrie, you want to take over?
Sure. Great. I can't see you, but I want to thank you so much for having me here to present tonight. I'm really looking forward to sharing our vision for the Silver Lake Park. And I know you all have been in this meeting for a long time, so I'll try to keep it short. And if there are any other further questions that I can help answer at the end or after the meeting, please feel free to reach out. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here so we can get started.
You're good to go.
Okay, can everyone see that all right?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm gonna just start off quickly touching on what we started as in terms of project goals for the project broadly. And that was really to prioritize diverse community voices in all steps of the design. Mike just touched on a little bit of what we did in terms of community engagement, and I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail on that and what we heard from the community throughout the process. We also wanted to support public health, passive recreation, and active recreation through greater activation of the park, and really revealing and sharing the environmental and cultural history of Silver Lake Park. There's been a lot of history here and also environmental changes with the creation of the park itself and the interesting history there, so we really wanted to highlight that. And then improving the park's interior circulation and connectivity to surrounding neighborhoods and downtown Rochester. So here's just an overview of our timeline of the process. We started in March. It took us about 7 months, and we're in our last week right now presenting to you all to get your feedback on the final plan. I'm going to quickly go through our existing conditions. We put this together back in March and April when we were really starting to understand how people are currently using the park and what's at the park now, and really create a baseline by which we can make recommendations in the future. But I'm not going to spend too much time on this so we can get into the designs and have a discussion mostly focused on that. So we looked at community demographics. We evaluated park amenities at the park, so just taking an assessment of what's already there and how and if it's being used. Then we also looked at kind of a little bit of a, not entirely system-wide scale, but looking at surrounding parks to Silver Lake Park to see, okay, what's at these other parks that are within 1 mile or 2 miles of the park, to really get a sense for, we don't want to make recommendations at Silver Lake Park that's going to be repetitive for another park close by. So we wanted to make sure we weren't being repetitive there. And then we inventoried the existing structures in the park and utilized Pi Global, a structural engineering firm. They did an assessment of each of these structures to kind of think about their life cycle and recommendations for their rehabilitation moving forward, and helped provide some cost estimates for what that would look like. We looked at iconic views at the park, thinking about all the ecological diversity that's present at the park, thinking about vegetation, the hydrology of the park, looking at assessing the Silver Lake dam removal, planned project and sediment removal, and then looking at the floodplain of the park. And then thinking about connectivity from the park to existing community assets. So looking at the on-street bike lanes that are on 7th Street Northwest and also in the Northwest Street there. And then how it kind of connects to downtown Rochester. We also looked at internal circulation, thinking about vehicular access points, parking, pedestrian access points, how people are getting to parks from the neighborhood. And then in addition to all that mapping analysis that we went through, we also did a really thorough community engagement process. So we had over 2,000 engagement touch points throughout the course of the project. We had 2 community surveys, and all together between those 2 surveys, we reached almost 2,000 residents, which is a great number. And then we had 3 rounds of community engagement. So round 1 was when we were kind of getting a sense for how people are using the park right now, what they'd like to see in the future, really trying to understand broadly how people are wanting to see the park in the future. And so this was mostly accomplished through a survey, and then we also had pop-ups at the Silver Lake Park Farmers Market and in the park itself. We also had a skate park specific survey that we got 234 responses to. So that was really exciting to hear from that community. And then I also wanted to note that we had a stakeholder advisory committee that helped guide this process overall. And we checked in with them in the course of the project 3 times. So the second round of engagement, we came to community members and the stakeholder advisory committee with 2 separate concepts for the park, and had got feedback on the park, those 2 concepts from community members. And we had a social pinpoint where people could put in their comments and kind of vote up and down on the 2 concepts. And then we also tabled at events like Thursdays Downtown, the Juneteenth celebration, Safe City Nights. There's a list there you can reference later. And then we had many focus groups, many specifically focused on kind of DEI and inclusion. So we had a DEI specific focus group, and then we had a focus group with East African community members and the Greater Rochester Area Dakota supporters. So really trying to include all voices within this process. After we went through our second round of engagement, we kind of combined what we heard in feedback from the focus groups and the survey and our stakeholder advisory committee meeting, and honed in on one kind of final refined design. And we recently had a final engagement round where we had a survey open to receive comments from community members about that final design. We received 555 responses, and just to kind of talk a little bit about what we heard that people are interested, and when we asked them what they did not see that they wanted to see included, it was things like pickleball courts, the swimming pool, kind of trimming back some of the vegetation and adding a bicycle pump track. All of those things were great to hear, and we've spoken to the city staff, and they've let us know that those things, especially the pickleball courts and bicycle pump track, are currently in progress at other parks. So We didn't hear a lot that really changed our plan. What we did include in terms of the skate park areas, we added additional water fountain and shade because we heard that that was greatly desired in that area. And we also moved some of the items that were requested to be up in higher up in specific phases rather than being in later phases. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the master plan overall. The plan is really kind of broken down into 7 main areas. So we have this dam area that we'll talk about, this north area just to the north of the park, everything kind of north of 7th Street right here, everything south of 7th Street, this confluence area where the Zumbro River and Silver Creek meet, and then this west shelter area, and then what we're calling this pocket arboretum, also known as Saratoga Square. So in this dam area, this shows what this area will look like with the proposed dam modification project. And this area really focuses on connecting to kind of restored wetland areas that are going to be available after the dam modification process is completed. And that would really be kind of adding in boardwalks that will allow for people to walk around and explore this wetland area. And then a history plaza where people will be able to connect with the history of the park all the way from the indigenous history of the communities that once lived here to the Works Progress Administration history of the park. And then we'll also have a kayak launch down here and kind of a water play loop that kids can kind of reach in the water and kind of experience the water. And this will be water from the city system, not from Silver Lake Park itself. And we're also adding additional parking in this area. And then in this north area here, we're including a trail connection to North Broadway. You'll see that here, and also where it connects up to this dam area. So this is helping to really kind of close the loop and to create an entire trail around the park to avoid people having to kind of walk along 14th Street Northeast to make that connection. So that's one of the big moves here. And then we also have kind of like a little bit of a descent down to the water, what we're calling wetland steps that will allow people to sit and enjoy the water, maybe read a book, talk with a friend at this location, and then kind of pedestrian bridge out to this island with a fishing pier that people can fish at. This area north of 7th Street kind of really focuses on more quiet experiences at the park. We heard a lot from community members that they really see Silver Lake Park as a place to enjoy looking at views of the water and being in the woodlands and kind of connecting with nature. So we're proposing here all the dashed lines that you see are pedestrian-only paths to kind of explore out to this overlook to look out at the water that we're creating here, and then paths that will take people to this island where there will be benches, public art installations, etc. And then we're also adding bike racks so that folks that are using this trail here can park their bikes and enter a little bit deeper into the park to explore on foot. Next to the east shelter, we're including some picnic tables, kind of a picnic gathering grove here, and then some updated and new nature play equipment in this area where it says 2 here. Finally, in this area, where you see the dashed line is kind of where there is an existing piece of land, a berm, that is enclosing a snow dump area. And what we're proposing is to actually remove that land, and that would open up open water for especially the rowing community to be able to have a little bit more length for their rowing because they'll lose a little bit of that length as part of the dam modification process when that upper part of the dam area is going to have some reclaimed land back. And then south of 7th Street, this is kind of a concentration of lots of exciting activities. And I'm just going to kind of move from left to right on the screen here. So right here, this will be a prairie walk within a restored prairie that will have large art sculptures for people to walk around and kind of enjoy and see. There will be 2 soccer fields here, some additional parking for those soccer fields. This is number 4, a picnic grove for people to sit and enjoy, being with friends and family, having a picnic. Number 5 is the area of the expansion of the skate park. The area to the south here is the existing skate park, so everything up here is the expanded area. And then 6 is a new basketball court. 7 are slides that will be coming down off the side of the hill. And number 8 is an upgraded splash pad area, so removing the existing pool and then including a splash pad at this location with an opportunity in this kind of lower left-hand corner of this area to become a pool if desired. And there's a slide that goes into a little bit more detail on that, so I'll talk about it in a second. And then in this area here, just greening up some of this parking lot, adding some trees and some vegetation in the middle here, and then adding some additional kind of adult fitness stations where families can kind of exercise while also watching their kids play. And then this number 10 meditation garden is a place for folks to kind of relax, rest, reflect, and contemplate. We also heard from the East African Muslim community in Rochester from our focus group that they really desired a place to pray when they brought their families here to play and use the park's facilities. So that would also be a spot set aside for them to be able to do that as well. I also wanted to note that at this location, we're proposing some crosswalks here. This is really just an example of a traffic calming opportunity that would be possible here, but it's certainly not, the end-all be-all. We're kind of recommending hiring some traffic engineers or other planners that can help make some greater recommendations on how people can cross safely here. Here is a greater detail image of the skate park expansion. I'm happy to answer any questions about this, but I'm going to kind of skip it just in the effort of saving time here. And then here's a little bit of detail into the splash pad. We have a older kid play area here, and then a toddler play area kind of set aside here. Places for people to sit and lounge on lounge chairs with a shade structure over it. And then in this area here, this could either be a pool at some point, or it could be a zero depth entry with more splash pad amenities. If you see this potential pool area image here, it could just have some depth in it for kids to experience a pool with depth, but not necessarily have the full swimming experience. But like I said, if funding does become available, there is a possibility that that could be a pool area. Here's a rendering of what this could look like with the splash pad and the basketball court and the skate park in the distance here. And then this confluence area is an opportunity to really kind of honor the indigenous history of the area and the indigenous presence of the area in this location. So in our communications and meetings with the greater Rochester area Dakota supporters, they expressed a desire to have a place to kind of have a place to meet and reflect, potentially a space to have ceremonies. One example that people can kind of reference would be Unity Park in Winona, Minnesota. This is a picture of what that looks like here, where people can kind of gather and have a place to get together. This would also include a land acknowledgement plaque at this location. And then the West Shelter area sees many upgrades, including more play equipment here, kind of a bigger expanded play area, a area for food trucks to pull in just south of the West Shelter and just north of Silver Lake Station. So this area is still being a paved place for people to come and access the rowing club here in Silver Lake Station, back of house. But at events or festivals or things like that, food trucks could come and line up here, and this pink would be like a special paving so that they would know that that's where they would go. And then having a picnic plaza here that would be that same kind of special paver. This area also will include a small kind of pocket dog park and then a rain garden to help receive some of the water that will be coming off of this parking area. And then finally, the Pocket Arboretum is a place what will really just connect this community to this trail that will go along the entirety of the park. We're also adding some small play opportunities for neighbors here. That would be some nature play in this location. And then at number 1 here, this is a native plant exhibition where you can have native plants to Minnesota, where you're having also name tags that are showing the names in Latin, in their common names, and then also the traditional Dakota names for the plants as well. And then finally, I just wanted to note kind of the plan for circulation around the park. What you'll see here is that there's kind of a thicker blue line that's navigating around basically the edge of the water here. And what that will be is a separated bike and pedestrian path that kind of separates those two uses to reduce conflict and to allow bikes to go at their desired speed without having to slow down and always be passing pedestrians and people with kids and people that might be walking a little bit slower. So that basically makes a loop around the park, except in areas where space might be an issue. So at that North Trail loop that I talked about before, I'm not sure you'll be able to get that full 20 feet. The other paths would be shared use 10-foot paths that are kind of secondary paths. And then, like I said, in this island area north of 7th Street, you'll have a pedestrian-only path. And then at some locations throughout the park, a boardwalk will be necessary to get from one place to another. So I think right here you'll have a little bit of boardwalk because there's not quite enough room along the right-of-way. So a little bit about phasing here, and then we can wrap up and get to some of your comments and questions. So phase 1, we'll see some of the really big high impact items. So we already have funding set aside for things like the splash pad, skate park, basketball court, upgrades to the pool building, and then in the West Shelter area, updating the play area, building that picnic plaza, upgrade to the West Shelter, and then in this confluence area, that would have the signage, that's the land acknowledgement plaque, the Dakota meeting area, and the pedestrian trails and circulation. Phase 2 is a little bit bigger. It includes many things like the parking lot and soccer fields here, the slides in the southeastern corner of below 7th Street, everything in blue, kind of finishing up what's happening along the water here, and then up to the dam area, including those boardwalks and the water play area. Of course, all of these updates would be contingent on the completed dam modification project. And then phase 3, the big items are this history plaza, upgrades to this pocket arboretum area, the East Shelter updates and associated play areas and picnic areas, and then these paths and trails and the kayak launch up here, as well as updates to the parking lot right here. Phase 4, it would be the pedestrian-only paths that I discussed here, adding more trees and public art in this location as well. And then I will also note that you'll kind of see that this trail that I talked about, the separated bike path, will be built kind of in sections too as funding becomes available. So that's kind of all in all it, and the estimated cost range would be about 14.5 to 16.5 million in total. And so thanks so much for listening, and I'm curious to hear everyone's comments and questions. Thank you.
If I may just start before you ask any questions, I just want to share that based on the council's review, we had planned on having engagement again between that point in time and now this point. We did receive that survey, that additional information Carrie talked about. So again, this helps shape those final comments you'll be seeing from our staff as well, and additional comments you may have will help shape this final document also. With that, questions you may have.
We'll open it up for questions and comments from the board, but again, reminder that this is a master plan, and we don't have funding for anything right now, so it is done in phases. And so what we're looking for is, we're looking for if we're going to adopt this or just say that, yep, we think this is a good document to move forward from. It doesn't mean that everything in the document is 100% going to happen, because we know with budgets and times, I mean, phase 4 is a long ways away from today. I do think it will help drive what happens first, and and where our focuses are. So what we're looking for from the board is input that on minor adjustments to the park, or things you've heard from your community members who've talked to you, or other ideas about the Silver Lake master plan that we might want to amend. So, Park Board?
If I may?
Yes, please.
Just for context there, we have $4 million dedicated based on the referendum funding already allocated for this project. We do know that there's other granting opportunities for us, really the skate park, playground, possibly aquatics. We pursue all of those as part of that funding strategy. So my guess right now is we probably have about $5 million to spend, assuming we get some of those grants.
Thank you. Board members?
I'm curious to hear from Dick first, how this kind of lines up with the Friends of Silver Lake's vision.
I make a motion to table.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second for discussion. Go ahead.
Discussion on the motion?
As Dave stated at the beginning of this, there are a whole lot of things that just don't add up. First of all, I don't know how the dam got into the master plan. I don't know how it ever got in there. It was never scheduled to be in there. Second of all, if you look at the trail, the Silver Lake Loop is 20 feet wide. 20 feet wide. The shared path is 10. Pedestrian is 6. Boardwalk is 10. I mean, there's not going to be a whole lot of green space around there at all. The one major issue that I brought up to Jenna, I think it was the geese. The geese are a problem. As Mr. Munson and I and Mr. Morrow went around and did the pass from goose poop. And unless we do something with that, so we can do all these fancy things, but if we end up having poop on there, no one's going to use them. It's that simple. I mean, to think we're going to take a kayak and go in that water, you've got to be goofy. I don't see that happening. You got 3 dams up the water, up the way by Soldiers Field, and so you're going to have to put in probably right below the law enforcement center to go. If they take away the south side towards the bridge, towards Broadway, they're going to take away about 1/3 of the water, and they're going to get that back by open up the snow dump. I don't know what that does for the rowers. It doesn't make any sense. They want straight, they don't want, turning. And of course, then the major thing is the swimming pool. There's no, I just can't believe we can't put a swimming pool in there. take some of the money from Soldiers Field and move it over there and use it. I think that Mike stated that the splash pad was $3.5 million. The splash pad?
That's what it said.
Pardon me?
Yeah,
And
it's a
Silver
splash
Lake.
pad is listed as-
Silver Lake splash pad, if it was built out fully, I think Kerry has a budget of $3 million in there. Again, is there fully funding for that? No, there's not. So again, right now, we've got about 1 million to 1.5 million pegged for that splash facility.
And we did Lincolnshire for 700 or 800, and we did Longfellow for much less than that. It doesn't add up. I just think that there needs to be more discussion, a great deal more discussion about the discrepancies in the different phases and the money that's going to be used. I mean, it just doesn't add up. Doesn't add up. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask, Mike, can you give us some, for those of us who haven't been following the dam stuff, where is that at? How is that shown in this? And what does that look like impact?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the council adopted a motion to have the dam removed. That was a priority session for legislation from the state senate to get funding for that activity. The council's made the decision. This master plan reflects that same vision. So the master plan assumed the dam would be modified at some point in time. So we reacted to that saying there's additional space there, so it's part of the master planning effort.
And there won't be impacts to the water?
We're not, as part of the master plan, proposing any impacts to the water. That all comes to the dam modification process.
Yeah, I know, I do agree that some of those inlets may not, I mean, I don't know how deep they are, but they may not exist.
They don't currently today, correct. So again, as that plan for the dam modification is fulfilled at some point in the future, we take access and opportunities to utilize those areas. And again, will they be modified based on that final design of the dam modification? You bet. Other areas for access we have shown in the plan are just that, points for access to the water. And while Mr. Dale talks about no one will use that water, we already know kayakers use the water, the rowers use the water, canoers use the water, paddleboat use the water. They're already out there right now. Having the dam modification provides a different opportunity for them to use that.
I think two more here. I question the food trucks at that intersection. I know it's a good use of kind of the fire hall or the fire station area, but I feel like there's more space on 7th Street and a lot less traffic and space for people to, it just seems like a very tight space that they're sneaking that into, and if it's popular and there's lots of food trucks, it seems like it would be better suited for more open space. That's really specific. My other one is also very specific. Did the Native community ask and volunteer to put the land acknowledgement statement in there?
We had a great conversation with the Friends of Dakota, RADS is the group name, about what we should be doing in this area. It's already been well documented from Dr. Scanlon, former park board member, that the natives used to camp on this embankment in this Silver Creek area. We also know that Indian Heights is a renowned known location for a burial location as well. And again, the conversation that we had really reflected upon how do you view that hilltop from the lake area itself. They talk about the Big Bend in the river. This is that Big Bend location. So they would have liked to have been in a different spot as their first priority, but not knowing when the dam modification may come forward. That's where they wanted to be originally. They wanted to go in a spot that could be done in a more timely fashion. So yes, they chose this
I'm talking
spot.
specific. There's some education that maybe I can send you around from the Native Governance Center around when it's appropriate to do land acknowledgement and when it's cultural appropriation and a bunch of other stuff like that.
They are directing that to us. We would not do that unless they wanted us to.
Yeah, that's that's why I'm specifically asking.
Yep, we asked them about that, and that's what they wanted to have, yes.
All right.
Other questions? This is just a random thing that was brought up to me by a citizen that stated kind of the area where the snow dump in the original plan had meant to be like an amphitheater or something down by the water. I have no knowledge. I'm not wasn't born and raised in Rochester. I don't know if anybody else knows if there's any merit to that statement. I couldn't necessarily find any documentation one way or another on it.
There's not.
And in the original thing, when she was going through the different things, one favorable was kind of like an idea that there might be like a little performance type of a platform or something down by the water, but I don't see that in any of the final plans. So was that something that was kind of tossed by the wayside?
Final performance area, Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a set of steps leading down wooden area on the northeast side by the Farmers Memorial area. Is that correct? Go ahead, Carrie. Oops. You're on mute, by the way.
Thank you. I wouldn't say that would necessarily be a performance area. We had a performance area in one of our 2 concepts that we presented to the community, and it simply wasn't popular enough to really bring it forward into the final version.
And we do have the performance area going into Cascade, so it talks about duplication too.
Right. That was also part of our conversation when we were making that final decision, is that there is a similar kind of performance space going into Cascade.
I wonder what tabling this would do, because minor adjustments are going to be made throughout the process. So I do agree the 10-foot wide path seems like a lot. The 20-foot wide,
Yeah.
20-foot wide path.
Yeah.
I understand that bikers, and I know Marty's a biker, can maybe discuss that, but that's a lot of paved area, especially if we're near the water and trying to be ecologically relevant and sound. There's a lot of runoff. I know there are some rainwater places that were caught when we put in additional parking spaces, but I guess I'd like to hear if Carrie's still there about the 20-foot wide path. Where does that come from as far as need for that size?
Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'll chime in too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think as part of our discussion with community members, we did hear that people felt like there was a bit of a conflict between bikers and pedestrians. And so to have that separation would be ideal, and to kind of allow bikers to go at the speed that they want, especially coming up from the Zumbro River Trail. So that's kind of where it came from. And in terms of community feedback on that, in our 3rd round of engagement, we actually had a lot of people ask for that to be moved into earlier phases. So there seemed to be a lot of excitement around that idea, just from what I recently read from our most recent survey. And then at our stakeholder advisory committee, we heard a lot of positive feedback on that as well. So just a little bit of context for community voices that are also, coming through in other ways.
Thank you. Mike, and then Marty.
Thank you. Just to share that this conversation about path size has been ongoing for the last 10 years. We know capacity at paths are getting challenging with how busy they are. Silver Lake, Soldiers Field, South Zumbro Trail, Bear Creek Trail. These are all getting more and more busy, and again, in certain segments. So we are looking at incremental sizing increases as we go forward. We modified part of South Zumbro Trail here about 4 years ago, making it from 8-foot wide to 10-foot wide just to match our consistent sizing. But even at, elsewhere around our community, we're saying, how can we make it bigger in our areas? So Soldiers Field, we're talking about a 12-foot trail on that southwest side. Again, kind of getting what we can get in those certain locations. Now, Carrie proposed a 20-foot trail here. That's ideal. Can we get that all in the final design? We don't know that answer yet, but that's the ideal when you start looking at the separated paths. Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, my comment would be, if any of you have ever walked or rode around the lakes in Minneapolis, if we really do a good job on Silver Lake, and it really becomes as popular as it could be, then having a separated bike pedestrian, which they do around a lot of the lakes in Minneapolis, it would make the most sense. So I'm looking at it as a good thing. If it's so popular that you need to do that, then that's what you want. You want people there, and so that would be great.
Vicki? Yeah, so first off, I want to say I do like the kind of the interesting twist on the nature play, the natural plant flats, with, you're not just connecting them to what we're used to, but maybe what they have been called by, people that have lived here for a lot longer than perhaps we have. But the one question I had, and it just occurred to me and you may or may not know, Carrie, what would the maintenance in one of these areas require? Would these be plants that would just kind of grow to one size and never need trimming? Would we have to worry about weeds? Would this be yet another thing for the mowing team to be working on? I don't know. It's just one of the things. Was that something that's the ongoing maintenance to keep these areas like that and the meditation garden in the nice, tidy way that they should be, at least to some extent? You know, natural plants, you're gonna want those to be natural, but in the same breath, you don't want it to be so overgrown that you can't see the plaques that tell us what they are.
Mike, do you have a quick answer for that?
Go ahead, Carrie.
Carrie?
Yeah, actually, I'll let Mike answer it since he's a little bit more familiar with operations and maintenance, so go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, everything has a cost for maintenance. What style of maintenance you provide really depends on the plant material you have, the palette, so to speak. More natural stuff does tend to be a longer lasting, less maintenance intense, but it does have maintenance obligations for that. And again, specifically, how much will it cost or what will we do? There's not been a design created yet to lay that out. It may be a matter of taking some of the existing trees we have out there, providing some signage out there, adding some more native landscaping around those trees, providing that signage around there. It's not been laid out in detail. Again, this is a broader master plan, higher level hierarchy, not a detailed design plan.
I guess I just wanted to make sure that, you know, as we go ahead and, you know, do these capital improvements, that we're not neglecting to realize that we have the upkeep issues to take care of.
I would say cost
And I
conscious
don't know
operations
exactly
is always top of mind.
All right.
And I think there's also opportunities for, you know, local groups and volunteers like master gardeners. Like these would be fairly small areas, and so I think that there would also be excellent opportunities to have a stewardship group or another volunteer group kind of take them on as in terms of maintenance. We've seen that a lot with parks. If it's a small enough area, some volunteer groups would be happy to do it. So there's opportunities there. I don't remember the name of the organization, unfortunately, but there is someone in our stakeholder committee, maybe Beautify Rochester or something like that, that she spoke about wanting to have more flowers and nice landscaping in the park, and would be willing to help with something like that. So there's interest.
Dick?
The vegetation around the lake, that is a problem, and we can't control it. We try to cut it down, and they cut it down in the fall, and that's it. And it grows up. If you have a bench that you've donated, that you want to sit and, you know, with your loved one had been there or whatever, you can't see the water. You can't see the water. In the process, or in the master plan, it does say to go to 3 to 4 feet. But there is no plan to do that. So you can at least look out at it. Dredging should have been done in 2018. We're still not done, for whatever reason. As Marty said, it would be nice to have the 20-foot walk. So if on the north side behind 14th Street, if that wood path is going to be 20 feet wide, hanging out into the water, doesn't make a lot of sense to me to do that.
May I respond to some of those comments?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, and then Dick looks like he has more.
Oh, that's it.
So as Carrie pointed out, the boardwalk area would not likely have that because of space constraints. And I believe it's called for an 8 to 12 foot space right now in the dam modification project. As far as the vegetation on the lake, that's an operational question, not a master planning question. The goals for management of that is in the plan. That's a goal that Dick and Councilmember Palmer and others have raised as an issue. We acknowledge the challenge to maintain that the way it currently is. We talked to Councilmember Palmer recently, looking at strategies for going forward. That's the best I can tell you right now. That's the operational question, not a master plan question.
Mark?
Yeah, just a quick reminder to please be attentive to the aquatics and technology that's out there that might change that plan a little bit or a lot. Dick brought up dredging, which I had written down because I know we were supposed to do that. How's the dredging gonna have an impact on the dam project? I know you don't know when the dam project is, but are we still gonna go ahead with dredging?
My understanding of the project, yes, dredging is still going to occur regardless of the dam modification project. My understanding, again, may not be quite correct, but a proposal will be submitted to the state again for requesting funding for state bonding dollars. Presuming that is the case, that will go through approximately May. If they get funded, the dredging, the dam modification, the other project components in there will be done. If that does not come forward, we're getting to a point where the dredging has to happen. Again, is it 2023 or 2024? That I can't tell you. That's an engineering question. They've raised that before. It's timing approximately.
Right. Are we gonna put some fishing piers in?
That is a proposal, yes, part of the master plan.
I was gonna say a few more because there's actually better fishing than people realize.
Yes.
I guess one comment, and I think maybe this is some of where Dick is coming from, is that we need to make sure that we're using this flexibly, because there's some very specific stuff put in it, and we know from the track that items get put in and then they want to be followed specifically. So if we're doing high level, we should have high level information, but when we get to specifics, we can't use it as a black and white tool that this is, you know, I understand the budgetary things that went on there, but I think that's where some of us are kind of thinking, what should and shouldn't be in the plan, and how much should we micromanage this? Because going forward, that's going to be an answer for why things are getting done the way they are. And so, just kind of a comment, I guess.
So the good news there is that, yes, it's a guiding document to share what how we're going to move forward with the implementation items. The specifics of that come back forward before the board again for any project.
Thank you. I have a question, if Carrie's still here too, about the meditation place over by the big playground. Were we gonna put water in there so people could wash if they needed?
Our recommendation is actually to add what's called the voodoo station to the South Shelter bathroom facility.
Okay.
And so that might be just like a small addition to that area. So it wouldn't be outdoors, it would be within that facility.
In the shelter by the playground? Okay.
That's right.
Or attached to it, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I know Chad actually had asked a little bit, what was the preferred ceremonial site?
The preferred spot, I think, was where the dam modification is going. And again, not knowing the timing of that, those that we met with from grads wanted it done sooner than later. That's why it's in phase one. That's why it's where it's showing. We actually talked about an area slightly north of there as well, which they also like, but they ended up preferring the point that we're actually on.
Okay.
Again, they chose that.
All right, I was just curious.
Yep.
Is the aquatics gonna be addressed in this master plan for a pool?
We can do that, but we had talked about having a comprehensive aquatics plan in our last discussion about Soldiers Field.
So we're gonna load that into Silver Lake.
The discussion?
Yeah.
We were talking about like an overall Rochester whole plan, so that would be including
All
this,
encompassing.
but not only specific to this.
If I may.
Yes.
This concept, this master plan, affords you the opportunity to do either one, a pool and splash pad or just a splash pad. So if you want to have your aquatics discussion going forward, either result is outlined in the plan.
I'm not sure what we do about geese either, because that's an ongoing issue, and I don't want to stall the plan to deal with geese, other than, I mean, there are cities that have little vehicles that go around and clean the paths, but that, the cost there is not just the vehicle, it's the staffing to do that on a regular basis. I know that's where we've talked about before. And that's also why we have the vegetation around the river. I do want to suggest too that I do like that when the dam project is done, that takes away some of the rowing space. And then so to take out the snow dump and add additional water to, or kind of move where the water's at, I think that meets the needs of the rowers, and I appreciate that.
If you look on the south side where the dam modification is they're talking about, there's a parking area there. And that's diagonal parking on the West River, or on Silver Lake, West Silver Lake. There's not enough room. There's not enough room.
So our motion was to table this until a further meeting. Any other discussion on that motion?
Said what would the impact be to that for the phasing? What would that set us back if we table it until we know more about the dam and how that'll be implemented and what it would look like?
The dam is gonna get done, we're not in control of that at all.
Correct, that's not ours.
No, just if we table it.
If we table it, we can table it a week, or a month, or 2 months, or whatever, it just slows down the process. I think we've gotten enormous amounts of community feedback. If there are specific questions that need to be addressed, we could table it for then and answer those. But those questions can also be answered after this gets adopted. Because there will be minor adjustments as we go on. If there are major adjustments, I think that's why we would want to table it.
Yeah.
You look like you have something else.
Well, the Friends of Silver Lake would certainly like to sit down, because there's some phases that we just do not agree with. We met this morning, and there's just some questions that everybody here probably doesn't realize, but we've looked into it. And are they valid? I don't know, but we certainly like to discuss it. And I'm not sure how we would set that forum up. If we would meet with staff, or with the consultant, or all the above. But we're certainly willing to sit down and discuss our concerns, and, you know, as we hang around there a lot, and we'll be willing to give every information we could on it.
Okay. Vicki, question, or
I was just
comments
gonna
on
say
whether we
that I
move forward?
personally, I would like to respect the Friends of Silver Lake. They've put a lot of sweat equity and everything into this already, and if it's a matter of tabling it for a month or so, to be able to answer their questions in full, I think that would be a reasonable thing to do.
Mark?
I guess my feeling is, depending on what the questions are, that should be something they can deal with staff on, and have set up a meeting with staff. I don't think staff's opposed to meeting with them, and go from there. Again, anything that happens is gonna be a ways away. They're probably not gonna, you're not going to be starting yet this year, correct, Mike?
Timing schedule would be, if you decide to go forward with this, depending on what date that would be, because today's date, we would hire a firm to do design details, get a aquatics group together to talk about that, or a playground group together to talk about that, the skate park, finalize that detail. I guess aquatics will wait because of the bigger study going on. But in reality, we like to look at grants as well. So grants will likely dictate timing specifically. If the skate park grant is the one I'm thinking of comes forward, that'd probably be a May approval of that grant, May or June approval of that grant. That means it's probably a fall construction at best. Playground could happen sooner, again, depending on what grant we select to go forward with.
So you would have time to get the Silver Lake group together with staff to have those discussions.
Any further discussion on the
And we'd
motion?
like to bring it back to here so that the rest of the board hears our concerns. So if we can put it out for the next meeting, the November meeting, you know, if they could meet with us in that time frame, and we could get our questions answered, and bring those questions, those answers back here, and let the board make a decision. So we just push it down till the November, whatever date that is.
Any further discussion on the motion on whether we table? Seeing none, we'll call a vote. All in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. It's a 3-3, so it does not pass. Is there a motion to approve the master plan for Silver Lake Park, subject to minor adjustments from the park board and staff?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, we'll call a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
That was 4-2. Did you get that?
I
Vicky
heard
and
one
Dale,
nay.
Renee,
Oh, okay.
Marty, Linnea,
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark, and Chad were aye.
I could not hear Vicky.
Okay, and that, oh, now I've got to find my agenda. I believe that concludes most of our
Thanks, Carrie.
information. Thank you, Carrie, thank you, Mike. And that leads us to the agenda planner, if I can find it, for the next several meetings. We have, on the upcoming meetings, we have a tentative study session for October 18th with nothing currently planned. Park board members, would you like to add something, or staff, is there something that needs to be added?
I can't think of anything pending.
Can you use the microphone?
Oh,
We just won't pick you up otherwise.
sorry about that. I believe I don't wanna ever say we're caught up on our study sessions, but, some of the pending, items we have wrapped up. A lot of them had to do with moving these two plans forward, so that's where we're at with that. There had been, discussions about, wildlife management. I'd like to postpone that until we get through the deer hunt, and that would be a good time to talk about the wrap up for this year and then, plans for next year.
I'm not opposed to waiting on this, but the one other thing that we've started to discuss a little bit was around partnerships, and there is that triangle diagram that Mike has pointed out about what level we should be partnering with what agencies, and I think there was a desire from, at least from me, for the 125 Live conversation, to have a little more transparency and clarity in, why are certain organizations supported in different ways. And I think that that's absolutely fine. I just want to bring a little more transparency to that. But I'm totally fine waiting until it's cold out to have that discussion.
I would suggest we move that at least to November 15th study session, because 2 weeks is not enough time, I don't think, for staff to get that together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that 6 weeks might not be enough.
On November 1st, so if there's nothing for study sessions, then the October 18th study session is canceled. Did you have something you wanted on the study session?
I've had it on about 5 times, which is the boxing. We've asked that. I've also asked for the sign at the rec center. And those have been, I started that back in about June. It'd be nice to have some type of commitment, either nay or yay, just can't keep kicking it down the road.
So I do think that on the November 1st park board meeting, we were supposed to have the sign and the dog park discussion this month, but that got bumped because this was so long. So the November regular park board meeting to have both the sign and the dog park on that agenda. And then as well as an initial aquatics discussion, where we go from there.
Who's gonna set that up?
The who comes to speak?
Pardon me?
You mean who comes to speak?
Yeah, the aquatics.
It's an initial discussion, so we have to, I think it's more like, where do we wanna go from there? What's our current state and where do we wanna go? Anything else board members would like on study sessions or regular meeting agendas?
Golf is up first. Golf is to be on the first.
Golf is to be on the first as well. Thank you.
Otherwise you don't see me, so.
So that's gonna be a lot.
It's gonna be a long meeting, but that's okay.
So can we take the sign and the boxing at a study session? Or is that?
If we're gonna take a vote on anything, then no. If we're just hearing information, then yes. But I think we wanted to take a vote, correct?
I would like
Or
to
take
take a down
action.
vote, yeah.
Yeah, so let's leave it on our regular agenda. Anything else? Then is there, no, we're not gonna adjourn. Any individual items from board members, and we'll start down with Chad. Chad, things that you wanna wrap up before we adjourn?
No, thank you to everybody for all the work they put in.
And your microphones.
Nothing. Just ask staff to please get up with Dick and the Friends of Silver Lake to set up a meeting ASAP, and then so we can get those questions answered, so you can get moving forward. Otherwise, nothing else.
I just am so happy about the amount of community engagement that has gone into these, and the amount of work that has gone in. I thank staff and all of the inter-city partnerships that had to happen. Our DEI and our community engagement, everybody working together. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I actually, it's been really refreshing to actually hear from some of our community members. I don't know if people listen to this remotely, but it would be especially good to be able to hear from any and everybody, whether or not you think your views are going to be well received, because I know that that's not always easy to do. I look forward to putting together some sort of the aquatics thing finally, and trying to square away a vision, because I think that's a big need in this community, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing that met better. Marty?
I just want to say thank you to the staff for the good work they did to prepare us for tonight. Thank you.
And Chair Archer, if I can, just, we talked about November 1st, so just grounding everybody in where we're at with the municipal golf process of engagement. So back to the September 20th was your public hearing. We followed that up with in-person sessions at each of the 4 courses. Those were about 2 hours long. We had approximately 30 to 40 in attendance, with about 6 to 8 that visited us at each of the courses. Really nice opportunity to chat with folks. I believe, Paul kind of covered it earlier, but consistent comments, and I think Mr. Dale did as well. Interest in seeing an increase in potential fees, the comments around retaining all 4 courses, including the 18 holes at Soldiers Field. So we also, by way of council resolution, were asked to conduct a statistically reliable significant survey. We are working with Morris Leatherman out of Minneapolis, who's conducting that phone survey for us. That's 500 community members who are randomly selected. There is an awareness of our 25% of community members who golf, so we are oversampling in that category. Peter, our contact there, is a golfer himself, so it helps on this topic of an understanding around what we are seeking to try to understand. And again, the focus of that really is how could we approach the sustainable funding strategy for municipal golf. And reminder, with the presentation, that's that $500,000, 400 for CIP, 100,000 for operations. That kicked off kind of mid last week, and that phone portion is all being taken care of by Morris Leatherman, including I anticipate you'll either see Peter here in person or by way of phone at your November 1st meeting with a recap of those results. We also launched the opt-in just this evening. That survey offered through POCO, any community member can complete it. It matches as closely as we can, given that one's a phone survey, one's a digital survey. The questions that are asked there, again, trying to get the data and information as far as the community's feedback on how we approach that $500,000. And the feedback through all of these processes, whether it was the public hearing on the 20th, the in-person sessions at the course, and these 2 surveys, The intention and plan would be at your November 1st meeting to recap all of the information and provide it to the park board. I'll let maybe Paul or Mike take any specific questions or statements around your specific activity on the 1st, but then we would intend to take the same information, hopefully with a potential recommendation for the park board, to the city council on to their study session on November 21st. Important reminder, it's a study session, so exactly what you said, kind of Chair Archer, to your activities. There would be no formal action taken by the council that day. There would need to be a date selected for some type of formal action that would come by way of city council meeting. So we have been promoting the randomly selected phone surveys, so community members are aware of it. We also put a press release. We'll do so similarly with the opt-in opportunity and making sure that folks are as aware as we can have them be about that engagement.
So is the information with the opt-in survey, is that already out yet, or is it yet to be put out?
It just got posted. I'll be adding it to the municipal golf page probably tomorrow morning. We're having just a little bit of a hiccup. We've got about 3,300 people who subscribed or subscribed users through POCO, so I can send a specific email saying, hey, we've got an open survey. That's what we've done in the past with like Silver Lake, Soldiers Field, as well as
is that
social
just on the
postings.
Regular Rochester Parks and Rec page then, or
the municipal golf?
The POCO thing.
The best way to access it is if you go to rochestermn.gov. There's a little icon that says city projects, and if you click there, there's a specific page for municipal golf.
Okay.
And I recommend it because it has all the dates, all the information, all the past details, so it's kind of the one-stop shop, all things related to municipal golf.
It's good information to know.
Yeah.
One thing.
Yes,
there
please.
was a meeting with the historical group that is going to come back with some sort of plan if Silver Lake is in fact historical, and that should be. I think they tabled that for 2 weeks.
Their next meeting.
Their next meeting, whatever that is. Okay. 3 weeks. Thank you.
Anything else, Paul?
Just a point of clarification, I may have missed this, but originally regarding the Silver Lake Master Plan, the first motion was to table so we could meet with Friends of Silver Lake, and that didn't pass. But then the comment from Mr. Bildbach to set up a meeting with the Friends group is separate from that motion. Okay, and it's just now a recommendation, is that? Okay, I just want to make sure I had clarification on that, and it sounds like consensus from the board, and we'll go ahead and set that meeting up, so thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
No.
Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, board members and staff.